of the Rehoboth Beach Board of Adjustment. We are still waiting for our board lawyer, Fred Townsend. He's on his way, so I'm just going to get through the preliminary items. We'll start with a roll call. My left.
William Pearlstein.
Jan Conacy.
Edith Herron.
And Barry Brandt. As you'll notice, our fifth member, Mark Saunders, stepped down from the board, so we will be going with 4 members of the board today. And was the meeting and public notice properly posted? I did see all the billboards on the houses on Scarboro, so everything good?
Yeah, the agenda was posted and published June 14th, and public notices to provoke cases was posted May 29th. They were sent to the newspapers well before the 15-day requirement. Signage was posted on the properties, and mailings went out to properties within 200 feet.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. And I know we had one public correspondence that was embedded in the document. Was anything received Saturday, Sunday, or Monday? Okay, we're good there. Okay, and as far as approval of minutes, I know we have February, March, and April of 2024 to approve. Did everyone on the board get a chance to review those minutes?
I did, and I had my comments to Ann in plenty of time for her to make small changes if she needed to.
Is it changes that we need to see or just minor?
No, they were minor.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned. Do you agree, Ann?
Okay,
I'm fine.
good.
I'm
Okay.
fine, thank
Can
you.
I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
For, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And that's for all 3 of those, February, March, and April of 2024.
Correct.
Okay. And I do know, just for the stating on the record, we had the Coast Hotel decision that was sent out by Fred. And did everyone get a chance to respond?
I did, and I had a correction.
Okay.
And I can't remember I honestly can't remember if he sent out a,
No, there were, no, I think Fred and Ann worked to get the notice out. So, I don't, was your correction minor?
no, because we had if you recall, we had a
Okay, so then, as soon as Fred gets settled.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, as soon as Fred gets settled,
I
we'll
can't
talk.
remember. I'm sorry.
Good timing.
Well, it's not great timing. I
No,
apologize
that's
to
fine.
everyone.
Everybody knew you were.
Thank you,
Okay.
Edie. Thank you. So I did make a change
Okay.
to the decision to give attention to the point that you drew my attention.
I can't think of the word now. The criteria.
It had to do with acknowledging the plans that had been submitted as
Exactly.
being a condition of approval.
The facade that we all talked
Oh,
about.
the facade, okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was done.
okay.
So has the official one been,
I believe it has. Did Ms. Womack, she's shaking her head, yes.
So it
Yes,
did-
I had authorized her to release it
On our
with an
behalf.
adjustment.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you. Okay, this afternoon, the board has 2 cases on our calendar. In both cases today, the board will apply the quick check factors that Delaware law recognizes as guidance for Board of Adjustments. Under Delaware law, an applicant for an area variance must prove that the requirements create an exceptional practical difficulty. To determine whether an exceptional practical difficulty exists, the board must weigh the following 4 factors. Number 1, the nature of the zone where the property lies. 2, the character and use of the immediate vicinity. 3, whether removal of the restriction on the applicant's property would seriously affect the neighboring properties and their uses. And finally, 4, whether failure to remove the restrictions would create an exceptional practical difficulty for the owner in relation to the owner's efforts to make normal improvements to the property. This standard is satisfied only when the difficulties alleged by the owner are practical rather than theoretical and exceptional rather than routine. Everyone who chooses to speak today will be required to give their testimony under oath. I will ask our attorney, Mr. Townsend, to administer the oath. We do not have a court reporter, so if we ever need a transcript, our secretary Ann will have to work from the recordings of this meeting. So the point of this is, please speak into the microphone, speak clearly. If at any time no one can understand or there's crosstalk, we'll stop and get organized and get back on track. And I would like to know today if there's anyone other than the applicants here to speak to either of the cases today. Just raise your hand if you're going to speak. Okay, no one? Okay, thank you. And we have sent the notice to people 200 feet. After the applicants finish speaking, we will close down the public portion of the meeting, and then the board will discuss and make a decision on the case. I just want to let you know, occasionally you'll see a board member using electronic devices. That is not to communicate with anyone. That's simply to look at these drawings that usually come out pretty small on 8.5 by 11. So we do allow electronic devices, but they are not communicating with anyone. One additional item I want to bring to the board's and the applicants, both applicants' attentions. Both of the properties today reside in Country Club Estates subdivision of Rehoboth Beach. This subdivision has an HOA, which I am a board member. However, the HOA ceased any involvement in building codes decades ago. So as a board member, I am unbiased on the cases due to my being a member of the HOA board. Okay, so let's get into our first case today, which is 107 Scarboro Avenue, and I'm going to turn it over to Corey.
Thank you very much. Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. Corey Shinko, Building Inspector. Before I begin, I just wanted to state for the record that there was a survey dated April 1, 2024 that went out to the board members this morning. This is referenced in as Exhibit A, and also referenced in my report.
Okay, did the board members all get a chance?
Yeah,
I have it.
In the email that I sent
Yep.
you guys?
Mhm.
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, good. Continue.
With that, I'll read the report.
Okay.
This is from June 11th, 2024 for case number 0424-05. Location is 107 Scarboro Avenue. The applicants are Roger and Josephine Weeks at 107 Scarboro Avenue, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The owners are the same as the applicants. The subject is that the applicants seek relief from the following: Code Section 270-21A, natural area, 270-21C, lot coverage, 270-42, structures in required yard areas, and 270-82, enforcement of chapter or the plot plan. The nature of the request: the applicant is seeking a variance to 270-21A, natural area, 270-21C, lot coverage, 270-42, structures in required yard areas, and 270-82, enforcement of the chapter plot plan. The purpose of the application is to allow for the continued existence of an unpermitted patio and other prohibited structures within the required yard areas. The property is located at 107 Scarborough Avenue, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The property is located in the R1 Residential District on Lot 49, Block 10, and Sussex County Tax Map Parcel Number 334-14.17-151.00. The property is a 50 by 100-foot lot with an existing single-family dwelling and an existing accessory building used for storage. The application background information. According to City of Rehoboth Beach records, code enforcement officials visited the property on February 7th, 2024 due to a complaint of work being performed without a building permit. Upon arrival, code enforcement noticed a side yard brick paver patio had been installed and informed the contractor that a permit was required. The contractor was instructed to submit a building permit retroactively for the work. This application was received and stamped into building and licensing files on February 9th, 2024. During the building application review, 2 versions of a survey dated August 27th, 1997 were discovered in the city's property files. These surveys are labeled Exhibits 1 and 2 by the building inspector. These surveys show the only recorded improvements at 107 Scarborough Avenue. These surveys were then used to assess what current improvements were neither recorded as existing on city records nor made with valid building permits. After the application was reviewed, the building inspector reached out to the property owner, who then met with the building inspector on February 23, 2024. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss options for the homeowner. These options included: 1, remove all work performed without a valid building permit; 2, submit a revised building permit application to show full compliance with the city's zoning codes; or 3, apply for a variance to the Board of Adjustment to seek relief from the city's zoning codes with the intent of keeping the structures already constructed or a portion thereof. After some time for the homeowners to weigh their choices, an on-site meeting was scheduled and conducted with the building inspector on March 5th, 2024. During that visit, the homeowners informed the building inspector they wished to apply for a variance. It was at this time that additional hardscape was observed in the form of decorative stones that had been laid around the property, primarily in the rear yard and around the front yard tree. A landscape edging wall was also observed. These items are recognized as structure in the city's zoning code and were non-compliant with lot coverage and setback lines. See Applicant's Exhibit A for a depiction of these structures. After this meeting on-site, the homeowner scheduled a follow-up at the Building and Licensing Department with the building inspector on March 11th, 2024, to review what was required to apply for a variance with the Board of Adjustment. Due to the size and location of the brick paver patio, decorative stones, and landscape edging walls, the property is in violation of the city zoning codes pertaining to natural area, lot coverage, and structures in required yard areas. The variance is requested. The applicants are seeking relief from the following provisions: 270-21A natural area, which states, in the R1S, R1, and R2 districts, a minimum of 50% of the gross lot area and 50% of the front yard setback area of every building lot shall remain as natural area as defined in 270-4. The following variance, 270-21C, lot coverage. In all residential districts, the maximum lot coverage shall not exceed that given in the following table. For districts R1 and R2, the maximum lot coverage as a percentage of the gross lot area is 40%, and maximum area of accessory structures, if any, is 10%. The following variance requested, 270-42, structures in required yard areas. No structure and no part of a structure shall be erected within or shall project into the required yard area except: A, cornices, eaves, gutters, chimneys, steps, or entries projecting from the main structure no more than 24 inches. B, fences and screens subject to the provisions of 270-43. And the final zoning code cited, 270-82, enforcement of the chapter of the plot plan. The building inspector shall enforce the provisions of this chapter. The building inspector shall require that the application for a building permit and the accompanying plot plan shall be submitted in paper form and in digital format acceptable to the city, and shall contain all the information necessary to enable him to ascertain whether the proposed building or structure complies with the provisions of this chapter. In addition to other necessary data, the plot plan shall show the location of all existing buildings or structures on abutting land within 50 feet of the side or rear of the lines of the premises of the applicant. The survey conducted by Karen and Associates dated April 1, 2024, known as the Applicant's Exhibit A, shows the current conditions of 107 Scarboro Avenue. The current lot coverage is calculated at 3,632.9 square feet, which equals 72.66%, which our zoning codes have as a 40% maximum. The natural area is 1,043.1 square feet. That totals to 20.86%. Our zoning code has a 50% minimum. These coverages are not compliant with City Zoning Code 270-21A, natural area, and 270-21C, lot coverage. Exhibit A also shows patio on the side adjacent to Lot 48, decorative stone and gravel laid throughout the rear, side, and front yards of the property, a concrete pad for a bench in the front yard connected to the driveway, and a landscaping wall for a garden in the southwest corner of the property, encroaching the rear and side yards. These structures are not compliant with City Zoning Code 270-42, structures in required yard areas. Due to this property being zoned R1, the required yard areas are as follows: 15 feet for the front yard, 15 feet for the rear yard, 6-foot minimum and 16-foot aggregate for the side yards. In this particular case, the 6-foot minimum side yard is the one adjacent to Lot 50, and the 10-foot side yard is adjacent to Lot 48. All of the structures cited in this section that were not depicted on the building inspector's Exhibits 1 and 2 were neither recorded with the city nor installed with a valid building permit. Conclusion. The applicants seek relief from natural area, lot coverage, and building setback sections of city zoning codes. This is due to several structures on the property, including a patio, decorative stone and gravel laid throughout the property, a concrete pad for a bench, and a landscaping wall for a garden. These structures are in various locations within the front, side, and rear yard setbacks. The structures also exceed the allowable lot coverage of 40% and reduce the property's minimum 50% natural area requirements. This application is the result of a code enforcement corrective action. Should the Board of Adjustment not grant any variances, the city will take steps to abate the zoning violations through proper channels as prescribed in the City Zoning Code 270-83, violations and penalties.
Thank you, Corey. Good report. Okay, at this point, let's, and
I have questions.
I was going to say, we're going to ask Mr. and Mrs. Week, if you wanted to come up here now, or in a few minutes, we'll ask you to come up, okay? If you wanted to come now, whatever, but we have questions for Corey at this point.
Should I go ahead?
Yep, go ahead,
Okay.
Edie.
Hi, Corey, and I want to thank you again for your thorough, detailed building inspector report. It is absolutely marvelous. Thank you for all of the care and expertise that you put into that. So the work performed without the building permit, what did the contractor, Miguel's, say to you and to the owners about not having a permit?
I wasn't there. I'll have to kind of paraphrase what code enforcement had
Okay.
told me after the fact,
Okay.
was that they didn't know that they needed a permit. That's
Nobody knew, hypothetically? That's what they say.
That's what I was.
That's what
I
they
was
say.
told.
And the item that they were working on was the side yard brick paver. Is that correct, or what was the work?
That was the work that
caused the-
facilitated their coming to the property.
Right. And then it was at that visit or a future visit that the additional hardscapes were found? The stones around the trees, the landscape edging?
That was at an additional visit, and that was by me
By
when I
you.
noticed the additional hardscape, the gravel in the backyard, and some more of the decorative stones.
Right. Now, going to Exhibits 1 and 2, the city's exhibits that, called Exhibit 1 and 2, because they were in the original packet, and they're from the city. Number 1 is very easy to read, and number 2, as you and I discussed this morning, is very light. But as you and I mentioned this morning, and the reason I'm saying that is because I want to share anything we discussed with the entire group here, that the only difference between them was the shed that was shown, the primary difference. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. So other than that, do you feel that these Exhibit 1 and 2 are identical or just close to each other, or is there anything else about which we should be focusing?
There is one other in the Exhibit 2. It's a small piece, but it still takes up lot coverage.
Right.
And that's shown, I have the original copy with me from the property file, so this is the easiest copy to read.
Okay.
But this shows a small air handler.
You want to put it up, or it's up to you? On
I-
the overhead?
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah,
This is one, too, that we have certain surveys that are like this in various property files.
Right.
And if we try to scan them or copy them in any way, the contrast is diluted quite
Go
significantly.
ahead, put it up so Mr. and
Yeah.
Mrs. Weeks can see it, and the board can see it. And you have to turn that on. Yep, they're way ahead of us.
As usual, Ann is at the ready.
I don't know why I doubted her.
Look at that.
Okay, so this is known
with
as
this mic.
Exhibit 2, the lighter one. And
I'll try to use this. Oh, great, this one works. Both Exhibits 1 and 2 show a sidewalk and a small deck with parentheses wood.
Right.
So they're identical in that, but I wanted to include this as Exhibit 2 to show that at least at some point, the city did have evidence that recorded an HVAC unit right in the back here, and the
That's the
8 by
little
10
X?
shed.
that's the little X?
Yes, ma'am. That's shown as a 3.5-ton air handler.
Does the sidewalk go to the side door? I know it goes to the porch door. Does it go all the way to the front entrance, which is on the side?
There is a front porch there. I would have to look at, use the photos or the new survey.
It's hard to see in the photos. I
That
can see it.
shows how that, where the front, the porch, where the front porch door is.
Okay,
And there's the landing. That wooden deck there serves also, that's where a side entry is.
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Does the sidewalk go to that deck landing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I have a follow-up question, if it's
Go-
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. I have more questions, but I'll get to, we'll get
In
to
this picture here, we've referred, doesn't have, it's from the applicant. Is this what you're calling a brick patio, or is this what you're calling a sidewalk?
That's what I refer to as a patio.
Okay,
I didn't include it in the report, but our definition in our zoning code for sidewalk is fairly robust. And it breaks down into two sections.
right.
I'll make it short. For it to be counted as a sidewalk, if it's not going to the front door, it can have a maximum width of 3 feet.
Okay, I was pretty sure that this was the patio, but I wasn't 100% sure, and I just wanted to confirm that. Okay, and they didn't have a permit for that, correct?
No, they did
That's
not.
correct.
That's correct.
And you never have to go short in terms of your descriptions. Yeah, we're always interested in I think in the full description that you want to give. Don't ever
Rehoboth
cut
Beach zoning
yourself short.
code is
Oh, I know, but.
it's very
but
robust.
I know that. So I'm back to exhibits 1 and 2, please. I assume there was compliance, including the shed, when the certificate of occupancy was first granted, as far as you know. Was that 1997 from when these were August of 1997, or?
That's hard to put down
Okay.
as concrete. In the property file, usually if I have surveys that are drawn as such, that means that they were submitted to the Building and Licensing Department at some point. If I don't have an actual date on there, or the date is from a certain type of ink, and then I have a different ink that's on the survey, there's no way to tell when, but what I do look for at a bare minimum is that we have some kind of recordation at all that shows any kind of a view of what the property looked like, and did we take it in at some point? Because if it's in here now, what I tell applicants usually is that whatever is on these surveys here is kind of a default that the city knows or knew about it at some point. And that's what I use against what the surveys I have them get currently, and then I go back and compare and contrast the two surveys, and whatever structures are on there now that weren't on there during these surveys that are located in the property files or any permits, then I have to reach the only conclusion I can, in that they were done without knowledge by the city nor a valid building permit.
Well, but I think we might be able to presume, you correct me if I'm wrong, that if the certificate of occupancy was granted in 1997, that at least with codes then, that the property was in compliance at that point, or am I being somewhat facetious?
It is, but the sidewalk and the wooden deck that were shown in these were hand-drawn. So they weren't done by the surveyor. So if I had to kind of arrive at a hypothesis, it would be that it was not done during the certificate of occupancy, but it
after.
was known about and discussed about with the city at some point afterwards.
Okay.
And that's why in one of them you can see a 7-foot 5-inch. Applicants wouldn't have written that. That would have
Right.
been done by a building inspector to show what type of distance from the structure to the property line was there.
Right.
For zoning compliance.
Is either one of these what you would consider, and I think I know the answer now, an as-built? Again, I'm talking about exhibits 1 and 2.
I would use the combination of the two surveys. The one that's shown up on this screen here that has not just the sidewalk, the wooden deck, the air handler, and also the shed, I would use that as a reference, as my default setting
Yeah,
point.
for an as-built, as
for an
close as we
as-built.
could guess.
And then anything that would have changed, this would have been the reference point.
Okay. In your opinion, what should our board do with these two these two drawings, is their primary purpose from your perspective to compare them with the Karen survey of April 2024?
Correct. The reason why I
Okay.
included both was to show, because the Karen survey dated April 1, 2024, shows a shed in the backyard as well.
Right,
And
right.
so when I first saw the first survey, I didn't see a shed.
Right.
But through more digging, I found the lighter survey, and that showed that there was a shed and the air handler drawn at some
Okay.
point.
Now, I have another question, moving on to another topic. Is it okay if I should just continue?
going. Yep.
Okay. What's usually done in such a case with such a gross, I'll call it gross, change from the minimums and maximums? For instance, the lot coverage is at 72.6%, where our maximum is 40%. Now, you're talking about 32% higher on lot coverage, and the natural area is 28.86%, and our minimum is 50%. So now you're talking about 30% again. So they're 30% over in the one place, more than that, and 30% under in the other. What's,
Yeah, I don't think that's quite right, because a shed as a separate structure gets some of that 10%.
Well, the lot coverage is set at a maximum hard limit of 40%. And if you read the definition in 270-4 of lot coverage, it's all structure.
Right.
The only thing that our code, and then if you go through the definition of structure, that's not defined as structure is sidewalk and off-street parking or driveways, private driveways.
What is that extra 10, because it says 40 and 10, I thought, for supplemental
The 10%, as I read it, you go through a bit more. If you have an accessory building, that cannot be more than 10% of the lot, of the lot, gross lot area.
And it's your understanding, Corey, that the 40 includes the 10? Or
That's
the
correct.
40?
Yeah,
40
that's
including
correct.
10.
Yep.
I had this conversation with our city solicitor about 2 years ago, because the way that it had been done prior to that was 40% for lot coverage and then 10% for accessory, but really that the 40% is the maximum limit for all structure. 50% minimum, hard minimum for natural area. But there's some properties that like to include more gardening space. So if they choose to do 35% lot coverage, then they can do 15% of sidewalks and driveways, because the driveways and sidewalks, they're not technically structure, but they're also not natural area. So they exist as the percentage to be used as the difference between the total structural coverage and the natural area minimum. The 10% is usually used so that people don't build a smaller house and then try to build a very, very large accessory building.
Right.
And this is a little off topic, but that's one of the things that we're hoping to bring.
Thank you for that clarification. I was not aware
future
of that.
meetings.
Thank you.
A few more things, and then one of my fine colleagues can ask their questions. So what is usually done in such a case? I mean, you've probably seen some
I've
cases
had
like this
this
before
happen
where
about
people
half a
were.
dozen times since I've been
Yes,
here.
and so what is usually done, or is there a usual?
But we're not asking about what a Board of Adjustment usually does here. Okay, I just want to make that.
I'm asking what the building inspector does.
I wouldn't want someone in the audience to think that he's responding to what the board
No,
typically does, because
no.
everyone up here knows that that's not what's going on.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
right.
I'm asking what the building inspector does in this kind of a case. When-
You mean if the person didn't ask for a variance?
Right,
If you discovered
Right.
this kind of thing and they hadn't asked for a variance, what would you have done?
So the three choices that I laid out in the
Yes.
building inspector's
Right.
report is my default starting point. If they do not want a variance, then they're left with options 1 or 2, which is to remove everything to come into all unpermitted structures. If we can find means that these structures have been permitted, then they can they have a grandfathering status for those structures. If not, then they have to remove those or remove them partially and come into compliance with zoning codes. If not, then we follow 270-84, which is the penalties and violations of our zoning code, and that gets handed over to code enforcement.
and then if they are choosing their second option that you suggested, you're coming into compliance with current codes,
Correct. Usually I'll get a survey.
Yes.
And then I'll run that through my software program and highlight the areas, the minimum areas that need to be removed to bring the property to zoning compliance.
Okay. let's see, I think we've answered some of the others. I had, what can the applicants do to become compliant? And you, as you said, numbers 1 and 2. And what were the violations and penalties? Now, I've read the regs, so we'll go to that. And that, let's see, that's all that I have for you. I have questions for the applicants when they're ready, but we'll be at that, when we're at that part of the hearing.
Thank you, Edie. Go to Jan. Any questions for Corey?
I guess, I don't know if it's a you question or not. I was really surprised. Typically, if you're having work done in Rehoboth by somebody who's licensed in the city, they typically say, oh, we have to have a permit. We can't do this without a permit. So I was surprised when you told me that they were licensed in the city. And of course, they're not here, so my assumption is that they never said anything about it. But so, and then the other question, and I don't know if it's a question for the applicant or for you. In the pictures, they show us a flooded area, and that looks like it's where the brick patio is now. I can't imagine that a building inspector would have approved raising a sidewalk a foot. You know, what did they put under it? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense on the property next door that caused the flooding. And then I also wondered, you know, if this is a brick sidewalk and it's not pervious, then it still floods, you know? So do you, you know, I don't know if you can answer this. These are some of the thoughts I had when I read this, because, you know, concrete floods just like dirt does. So we don't know anything about what happened next door, right, that caused the problem.
Yeah, I want to, well, I'll let you answer that question. I want to poke into that a little bit while I get a chance.
That was one that I feel that the applicants could answer in a much more accurate way than I could.
Okay.
But that is something that I was told by the applicants was a reason for why they were doing what they were doing.
Okay. All
Would,
right. That's it.
okay, would the city help a homeowner if there was flooding problems with suggestions on how to correct the flooding?
I do. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We go out quite often as just a complimentary service for the residents.
Okay.
If they have concern about stormwater, on what they could do that would be zoning compliant, or if they needed to get a variance, how the process would look. But we do try in a zoning compliant way with the materials that are allowed within the setbacks to help with this water issue between properties.
So I guess I'm trying to form this into a question. Did you look at the neighboring property? Because there's code, you're not allowed, we can agree, you're not allowed to change the elevation of your lot. So if someone on another property takes it up, you know, I forget if there's a minimum number of inches, that would potentially cause flooding. So did we ever check the other lot for, you know?
I don't know if it was when it was built. The house that it was adjacent to it was built, I would say sometime within 5 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, they were all built, there was 4 or 5 lots right along there. They're all kind of built within a year or two of each other.
This is something that is on our radar that we've been wanting to quantify for quite some time, along with the stormwater task force, which is grading. There's no quantitative either pitch or elevation or change of elevation in our code sections that we can cite to that gives, don't go more than 3 inches or 5 inches. Right. What we have kind of is a statement now that's made to all major renovations and new construction projects that require stormwater measures, is that the construction activities do not negatively impact adjacent properties. Okay. And usually we try to have a swale or a small depression in the ground where between the two properties. And if that can't be achieved, what we usually try to strongly recommend to sometimes enforce is that a French drain system be put in place.
Which is what we see going in.
Correct.
Okay.
And that at least is underground. It's allowed to have natural area on top with a subgrade for high percolation that goes to a perforated tube that takes it, that distributes that stormwater over a larger surface.
Did you happen, I know we're not the owners of lot 50 are not here, but did you look at building permits to see, they went in submitted an application for a sidewalk, an allowable sidewalk, and then how it was construction could have caused the flooding?
I did not do, as far as going into the neighbors' records and seeing if they did work without a permit. I know that they have a certificate of occupancy, but that is, that would be, I will look into that as a separate matter with code enforcement to see if that was, any work was done without a permit.
Okay.
We presume that in this case, these owners did not contact you, though, about any mitigation factors about flooding. Is that correct? These owners did not?
Prior to code enforcement going out? Correct.
Okay.
Well, you can answer for yourself, right? Or you're saying there's nothing in the record that suggests that they inquired of your office?
Correct.
Yeah.
On my, to me or anyone that I know of in the building and licensing, there was no correspondence prior to the code enforcement making their initial visit to the property.
Thank you.
Okay. Bill?
I want to ask clarification, Corey, on your answer to Edie's question. If we simply deny any variance, will they need to comply with current zoning, or will they have to go back to what the 1997 plot showed, which has, for example, a deck that's within the 10-foot setback and other items?
I would go back and use these two surveys as Exhibits 1 and 2 together, and that's where the lot would have to return back to.
Okay, so they would not have to go back. They wouldn't have to comply with today's setbacks. They'd have to go back to the 1997, what we sort of are deeming
Any
approved.
additional ones on top of the survey, anything else that they would want to do would be to today's standards.
Yeah.
But I would use the fact that these structures here as the shed and the air handler, as well as the wooden deck and the sidewalk, as grandfathered status, that those structures shown on that survey could remain, but anything additional to that, if it was done, that would take their lot coverage over 40%, or their natural area under 50%. They'd be able to do certain things, but not, they'd be held to today's standards.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, I can, if I could speak to that. I think the general rule is that you got to bring the property, if you've got unapproved improvements or unapproved improvements, you don't get the benefit of the lapse in time, that you've got to bring them into compliance with current standards. But this is kind of an exception when the record shows that there have been some representations that have been made over time as to what structures are on the property. So it's kind of like generally speaking, they would be required to come to today's standards, but they have some evidence in the record saying that those structures were there for some period of time, and the city takes the position that, well, if this is in our files, we should have known that, or we're going to treat it as if we knew that, and we're going to hold them to the standards applicable as of the date of that notice.
So, as I understand, and Corey will correct me if I'm wrong, if this is denied, they will need to go back to the 1997 plat that's up, Exhibit 2, and that's the baseline, and then anything else they wanted to do would have to be in compliance with today's survey in terms of coverage or structures.
Well, are those sketches from 1997?
Yes.
Again, the survey was dated as 1997, but the improvements, you can see, again, we're done with different type of ink.
Okay, so I'll call it Exhibits 1, A and B, I think is
You're
what
absolutely
I'm-
correct. They would have what's shown on there to be grandfathered in, and then any additional thing that they wanted to put, any additional improvements, would get filtered through today's zoning codes.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's clear. Thank you.
And Bill, if I can correct you just a little bit, A, B, and C are specifically used by the applicant.
Okay.
The exhibits 1 and 2 are specifically used by the building
Okay, so
inspector.
so that it's clear in the record, I was referring to what's up on the
That's
on
number
the
2.
screen.
That's number 2.
2, and
1 is the one that's darker, that
Okay.
same one, and A, B, and C are, A is the Karen's, B are some photos, and C is a,
And I should say 1 and 2.
yeah, yes,
Fine,
please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I just want to follow up to make sure I understand. Virtually everything that they're asking for a variance for today are what was put in 2024. Is that correct?
No.
They're not asking for a variance for the deck or the shed, but for all the concrete and all of the brick
I thought that a
patio?
lot of those papers had been there.
Yeah.
Which the paver, the brick patio?
I think if you were to overlay the exhibit number 2, as shown on the screen here, with Karen's and Associates, you would see definitely some overlap, but the geometry of the patio has expanded.
Okay, because it says February 2024 on the applicant's exhibit. They were where they're working on the flooding, and then I know those big boulders all around the trees are fairly recent. So, and then the concrete wall and all that stuff, isn't that all fairly recent?
I don't know when the gravel in the rear yard and some of the side yard, as well as that landscaping wall around the garden in the back was put in. It appeared like that was at an older date.
And we can ask the
2024.
applicant as well for the
Yes,
dates.
they would be able to answer those questions more accurately.
Right, I know, I saw that.
There was already 2016, all those papers, not the brick.
Okay,
We'll have to ask the applicants, but the
Okay.
pictures show that there are a number of pavers in 2016, which is separate from the 2024. Maybe we can have the applicants clarify that.
because this is the driveway, I'm assuming.
Why don't
Okay.
we?
We'll ask
We can walk, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for building inspector? All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to ask the applicants to come up, and then we will, understand your case. Thanks, Corey. Okay, we will get you sworn in by Mr. Townsend, if you can state your name and
So is it Mr. Weeks?
Yeah, Roger Weeks.
Josephine Weeks.
Okay. And Mr. Weeks, can you pull that microphone a little closer? We need to pick up everyone's voices. And the other thing.
How is that? Is that
That's
better?
good. That's good. And then additionally, we're going to hear from you, we're going to do as much as we can to hear from you one at a time and not back and forth. Okay, so you'll each be offered the opportunity to speak, but we're going to do our best to ask questions of one witness at a time and get responses from one witness at a time. Mr. Weeks, can you give us your address, please?
607, 107 Scarboro Avenue.
907. So,
107.
I'm sorry, 107. Mr. Weeks, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So you may begin with your presentation. You can tell us what it is that supports your request for these variances.
Well, we've issued documentation, as far as what our position is with the variance. Of course, the main question that we had is that, we have the flooding, and that's a serious problem for us with the flooding. And the reason we have the flooding is because the resident next door to us did some modification to their elevation. And once we had a rain, then of course, we couldn't even use the ground. it was a lot of puddles and just, like I say, couldn't use it. So that's pretty much where we stand. Do you have anything to add?
Do you want to ask questions of Mr.?
Well, I don't know if.
Oh, you want,
Weeks,
okay, all right.
does her-
Ms.
and then we'll
Weeks,
ask-
your address, please, for the record?
107 Scarborough Avenue.
Ms. Weeks, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you want to support,
Do you have
Your
anything
case.
do you have anything you'd like to add to what Mr. Weeks just offered?
You can see his condition. I thought it was an exhibit, part of the exhibits that we had presented. We have been residents over, I would say, 25 years in Henlopen Acres. We've sold the house in Henlopen Acres, Swannindale number 3 Swannindale. And sold the place sometime in 2006 and left Rehoboth, never to come back. Sometime in 2016, in one of those medical conferences that I attended here.
I'm sorry, could you speak into the microphone a little bit? I'm having trouble hearing you. Thank you.
You
In
can pull the
2016
microphone closer if you're more
In
comfortable.
2016, we were able to visit Rehoboth after all those 10 years of absence, and we were able to take a look afresh about, well, we really loved Rehoboth. And it was in one of those times when he was able to walk around and discover this place in 107 Scarborough, and he fell in love with the place, I fell in love with the place, and we thought we wanted to come back to Rehoboth. We are Washington, D.C. people. We live in Washington, D.C. all these years, and still live in Washington, D.C. We would come visit weekends, sometimes stay longer during summers. And for 8 years, we never really did anything, improvement or anything to the property. 8 years, since 2016. And it just so happened that we bought the Kilwin's chocolate place in January, right by Rehoboth Avenue. And to support the business, we just started staying in the property. Roger has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's for the past 3 years. We have a neurologist in Georgetown University Medical Center up in Washington. We're in medications and all that. With flooding and all that stormwater collection, there would be times when I, with my small frame, could not even carry him out to the car. And we never confronted our neighbor, never said anything about, the deterioration of our side property there with the runoff water coming from his elevated location. I believe he did his renovation there for like 2 or 3 years ago during the COVID area.
And you had no flooding before that, correct?
None. We had bushes. We had basically some nice landscaping there. And they are all ruined through the years.
So, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
You have anything additional? Again, what we were trying to understand is the exceptional practical difficulty that that you two face with the need for the variances.
I guess, however the place looks now with the improvement, in the first place, I take, like, I don't think it is a patio. There are no chairs, nothing there. It's paver. It is clean, easy for his walker to just glide through, get out of the, the landing there and push his wheelchair to the car. I don't know, I mean, we are here to hear from you. Just tell us, what should we do?
Okay, we will have questions for you now. So we'll start with Jan to ask you questions. Are you, okay.
My question is, what the city is calling a patio and you're calling a walkway. We're talking about the same thing. Would we agree? The bricks, the red brick in your picture, now what do I do with the picture?
If I may, can I give my copy to them for reference?
Yes, that would be great.
So Jan, is either sidewalk or patio?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean,
What they'll talk about is a patio, and this section here is how wide it is.
Okay.
so Mrs. Weeks, my question is, I can't tell from this picture, does this hook right into the driveway?
No,
No, there's like,
no,
there's dirt
is-
between the,
No, the car doesn't go,
well, I know the car doesn't, but I mean, if Mr. Weeks is walking with his walker, he walks this way, and then he goes
Yes.
right to the driveway is right there at the end of the patio?
yes.
Okay,
If it is continuous.
it's continuous.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I wanted to see. So I guess one of the issues I have, and I'm not a landscaper, but I have a garden and I like to take care of it, is if, all these stones that you sent pictures of and everything, they would all have to come up, right? I mean, they're going to kill the trees anyway, so it doesn't matter, but they're going to come up. If they don't get a variance, then all of this stuff, the gravel, everything has to be removed.
Anything that wasn't shown on Exhibit 2 would have to meet compliance with our zoning codes.
Okay, and so the concrete wall and everything else. Okay, I just wanted to, I was trying kind of a lay of the land because I also have a walker, so I haven't been over to get a better lay of the land. But thank you, I'm finished.
Bill, are
yeah.
there any questions?
Ms. Weeks, other than the work that was done in this February that led to the building inspector, did you and your husband do any other work on the property since you bought it in 2016? Any pavers put down, any gravel put down, anything like that?
Everything was this year. I mean, when the pavers were done, but nothing years before. This is the first time in 8 years that we have started doing the pavers.
You bought the house in 2016, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir, yes.
And since you bought it until the most recent work,
Nothing,
was anything done? Any
Nothing.
gravel put down, any pavers put down there?
nothing at all, because this was just, for summers, short trips and all that. This is the first time. We just felt we had invested so much in that business down at the Kilwins. We own it now. And since January, we thought we could stay here more often. But never, none in the 8 years that we owned this place.
Okay,
And
and then
since
the work that you've done since January, February was the brick pavers, and you said both where the area of flooding was and also to the shed, is that also correct? As I read your material.
I wouldn't account that for the runoff of the water from the neighbor. I would just say it just was muddy. It was, but nothing was done there prior to this year.
Yes, but in terms of this year, as I understood what you were doing was dealing with putting down the brick for where the patio is, and then also putting down gravel or other covering to be able to walk out to the back shed. Is that correct?
To the back shed. There were already pavers there.
There were pavers there.
There were pavers from 2016, basically.
Okay, so then what did you do this year?
They were kind of moved.
You could see in the photos, the pavers in the original
That
from
went
2016.
into the shed, yes.
Okay, you
But all those big rocks all around the trees, they were done this year.
Yes.
Okay,
And we can always.
And
tell
and
us,
the bench and the other things mentioned in the building inspector's report, they were all done this year.
This year.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I understood. I thought I understood it correctly, but I do understand it correctly. I don't have any more questions.
Bill, any additional? Okay, all right, I'm going to ask a couple questions. So I just want to make sure on the record that your builder or builders, if you've had more than one, they did not tell you you needed a permit.
No.
And yet we know that from Corey, I don't know if it was just one builder or more than one.
There was just
You know,
one.
and they were licensed in the city, but they did not tell them they needed a permit.
All I can say on that is they've been licensed in the city since 2021.
Okay.
That's
Thank-
what he would know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And there was a concrete walkway from the driveway, where the cars go, back to the porch steps, as well as back to the side deck that was existing. And that's what was getting flooded. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And did you ever seek, a consultation to, either, it sounds like you did not through the city, but to a contractor to just alleviate the flooding, to help you fix it? Because you already had a concrete sidewalk, which I think would probably have helped access to the side of the house versus more of a cobblestone, or not a cobblestone, but a paver type. So did you ever seek someone to help you fix the flooding problem from a contractor?
Over the course of a year or two, what we would deal with this flooding there is in fact, Our Lady property manager would bring us slabs of concrete to put on top of the paver, the old paver, so that at least my husband Roger could
Okay.
get through the water and then hop on to the next
Okay.
pavers. We have not done that. I mean, the most probably that I could recall was, when late last year, when the city was trying to pave Scarboro Avenue, we had asked one person, and he was supposed to be with Public Works, and we had pleaded with him to give us an idea how to deal with this
Okay.
flooding, and that the ground had already sunken.
Okay. All right. And so there's also a path on the far side that was pavers, and now there's gravel filling in all the way around the non-flooded side, the shorter side? You
Yes.
filled that in with gravel as well?
Is that the left, this
The-
other side?
Closer to the bank.
Closer to the bank?
Yeah, that side.
That is all mud with some shrubbery. And
And that's
just
why,
thought we could put some pavers there.
okay.
But you did that.
We did that. That is part of the
Was part of their project, I
the
think.
project that we did.
All right, and in Henlopen Acres, I don't know if you ever did improvements, did you get permits for any modifications in Henlopen Acres?
We have not, through the years, really done much.
Okay,
None.
understood.
No.
Okay, they were all my questions. Edie? Yeah?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
So what other plans or options have you considered if your variance is not granted?
I guess, rip up the place and maybe move out. Or sell, I don't know, who is gonna buy a place that has been, the pavers are ripped out and all that. I think,
Well, you bought it in 2016, but have you investigated other ways that you could comply with city zoning?
we have no idea about this, that the zoning permit and all that is needed.
No?
No.
Well, I need you to know, and we all know this, is as we are going to be deliberating this,
Yes.
we can only look at the property, not the people. If or when we grant a variance, it is for the property forever, whoever buys it. The next person could be a 20-year-old Olympic champion. I mean, it has to be for the property, and once the variance is granted, it moves with that property in perpetual, as a perpetual item. So we are looking at the property and its characteristics, as well as with the case that you've presented. I'm just letting you know that.
Okay. Let's go back to the shed for a second. Need for access to the shed, just curiosity, what do you access? Do you go back there? Mr. Weeks go back there?
Mostly myself.
Okay,
Mr. Weeks couldn't navigate that with his,
I have been back there, and
not
it wa-
lately.
not lately,
okay,
There are a lot of things that I need to put there because some stuff, the overflow from the business, there are equipments there that I need to take out from
okay.
the business and put in there, and it's all piled up,
Well,
basically. It's being overused now.
So it's not lawnmowers and it's not yard equipment in the shed?
Some equipment, some yard equipment.
Okay.
It is a mix.
Okay. All right. Any more questions, Edie?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't
anyone
think so, not at this
Anyone
point.
else? Okay, and just to double check, there's no one here wishes to speak? Okay, at this point, what we're going to do, just so you're aware, we're going to close down the public commentary. We may ask a final question, but we're going to deliberate amongst ourselves. You get to listen, and then we'll make a motion to either approve or deny. And since we only have 4 voting members, we have to have 3 votes on a motion to make it approved, okay? At least 3 votes.
Could I ask Corey a question real quick?
Absolutely.
Corey, I'm looking at this picture, and it looks like there's gravel in between the bricks. And is it a pervious pavers, or is it, do you know? Since I didn't get a permit, you probably don't know what it is.
I'm not sure what type of pavers, if they're porous or not. Most pavers nowadays are, and then if they have either sand or mortar, it depends. The more common one is sand. They move around, but water can get through. And Without the specifications of the pavers, I can't tell.
Okay. I was just curious because it looks like sand, but then again, it may not be.
We can ask the homeowners if they know.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Do you know if this is a pervious pavers and a
think they
pervious
were-
installed?
I could remember, probably there was like a sandy bed where they put.
And they put them on, they just put them on top of sand?
On top of
Okay, that's
those.
not pervious then. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, any final questions? All right, so like, again, we're going to close down the public and open amongst ourselves the discussion. Anyone want, Bill, Jan, Edie, start it off?
I can start, or anybody can, whatever.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, I've looked at the quick check factors here, and it's thorny. I sympathize with their issue. But the nature of the zone, as in the large texture, it's okay, but the excessive lot coverage and minimal natural area bother me. And I have the same problem with the character of the surrounding area. Again, we have excessive lot coverage existing and minimal natural area, so to me, those aren't okay already. The impact on excuse me a minute. Surrounding area is probably okay, except if they'll be causing flooding on 48. I mean, on 40, no, it's 48, right? It's the next one over. Because this could be a following thing. One person does something, it causes somebody else a problem, and then somebody else. I don't know this. I'm not technical. But when I come to the exceptional practical difficulty, it's absolutely, there isn't one. The applicant seems to be relying on, I don't know, I didn't know about anything. And the perceived hardship is physical for these wonderful people, but it isn't for some of the reasons that we need to look at. And it's really a want and convenience to justify, even though we can all see that this wonderful couple is looking for something that perhaps we can't give. Maybe we can. I'm concerned about the grossly over their lot coverage and grossly under natural area, as I said. To me, granting variances substantially impairs the intent and purpose that the zoning would give, perhaps an unfair advantage to applicants who say, I didn't know, I didn't find out. People are residents of a community, and they have the opportunity and the resources and the possibilities of getting information. And you either live someplace and you know where you live and you find out what's involved, or you don't. And my feeling is if you don't necessarily get to ask for something where you're already over the sidebars. That's where I am. Very sympathetic, but yet not at the point of feeling positive about the variance situation.
But thank you, Edie. Jan or Bill, thoughts? Additional?
Well, I walked down Scarboro in the old days a lot, and I'm familiar with all these. These will kill the trees. I personally feel like I was appalled, frankly, and I think that exceeding the natural area like this, I can't support keeping this concrete and all this stuff. I'm a little concerned about the sidewalk area. And the ability to get to and from, I guess you go up the deck. Well, how can you go up the deck in a wheelchair? I don't, then there's steps, go from the brick pavers to the deck to get into the house, I presume. How do you go up them in a wheelchair?
You have to carry him.
You lift the wheelchair up. Is that the only entrance into your house? Okay, and that's where I see a hardship. I don't know that you need a whole patio to do that, and I don't know, I don't know what the person next door did, and the city hasn't looked into it yet. But the only variance I can even consider would be something to go from the driveway to the porch. And but the rest of the stuff, in my personal opinion, is way over the top.
Bill, thoughts?
Yeah, and Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, if we grant this variance, we basically are allowing everything that's been done up through this year's work. So we basically would be saying, and I think I'm repeating some of what Edie was saying, that this property forever could have 72% coverage.
Correct.
We'd be approving all the pavers, everything else that was not on the exhibits 1 and 2 that have been added before 2016. And so, to me, I can't do that. And so, part of my, without wanting to give advice to the applicants, but I think that's partly where Edie was going, would be to consider coming back to us with a plan that removed a lot of the pavers. If you need the sidewalk for the physical reasons. But I think that it's the sense that I'm hearing that we've got 40% coverage is what the city commissioners have told us is expected coverage in Rehoboth. You are so far over that the idea of forever saying that house can always have 72% coverage is something that I think would be very difficult for any board to approve, because that would be that house forever, not just for you, but for anybody else who bought it. It is so far outside what the city's expected coverage is that I think we all commiserate with the physical issues that Mr. Weeks is facing and would like to find a way to be able to deal with that. But I think, and you may, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to tell you, I think to do what you want to do, you need some help. And Fred, you should stop me when I'm going too far. But I think you need some help. You need both help on the landscaping, but you also need help about how to bridge the situation you're in with what the code provides. I don't think this board is going to, I'm quite certain this board is not going to let you add to the coverage. You already have way too much given what the rules are. So, as you were saying, Mrs. Weeks, coming back with that you're going to remove a lot of the coverage and then ask for the sidewalk to deal with the flooding problem and Mr. Weeks' physical problem, it's a different request, but it's one that I think would be at least in the direction I personally would then say I could potentially see exceptional practical difficulty, given whatever it is you come back with. But we can't add to what is a gross violation already of what the lot coverage rules are for the city. So that's sort of where I'm thinking.
Could I ask Corey just a quick question?
Sure.
If they removed everything except a if they removed everything except a pathway from the deck, to the driveway to get in and out of the car and everything, how far over would they be, roughly? Because there's gravel everywhere, there's rocks everywhere, there's cement structures and everything, and everything was removed.
And by path, you mean a sidewalk?
Well, a sidewalk that a wheelchair would fit on, not a patio,
Yes.
a sidewalk that the wheelchair would fit on to go from the porch, the house, to the car or whatever. How far over would they be still?
The side that's adjacent to Lot 48, the one that's in question, that has the 10-foot side, that's the 10-foot side yard. From what the most current survey shows, the existing deck is 7.6 feet away from the property line. If they wanted to have a ramp that met ADA requirements, that requires a 5x5 landing, so that would be your landing or your deck, but it would be considered a landing for ADA. And then as far as the ramp itself goes, apart from the slope of a 112 pitch, it needs to have a minimum of 3 feet between the actual house and then not the outside of it, but where the handrail would be. So the bottom of it would go out a little bit further. Usually we see about 4 foot width, and then that goes out to a 5-foot by 5-foot landing. That would most certainly encroach
On the
the 10-foot side yard setback, but it would only encroach by most likely 1 foot to maybe 1.5 feet.
So if you're handicapped and you need to have a wheelchair and a ramp, do you need to get a variance to do that, or is the city allowed to do that?
We have an administrative variance
Okay.
for existing structures, not for new.
Right.
This shows clearly that they have an existing structure, so by way of the administrative variance, I'd have to verify this, but that could be enlarged to encroach to within 1 foot of the side yard setback to incorporate that, without coming to this board.
Okay, and that's the only entrance to the house, is my understanding from what Mrs. Weeks has said?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay. That's my question, thank you.
All right, and my feelings on this are what I agree with what everyone else is saying. A couple things. In your application, you were saying as one of the hardships was the expense to remove all that has been done, and that we cannot take that as a justification because you cannot bring on the problem yourself. So that's one thing I wanted to comment on. And kind of what my thoughts were with what Jan was saying is, why can't you just, and we cannot design it. I think your builder did you a major disservice here, especially one that was licensed in the city, to simply come up with, from the car parking spot, and I know your concrete was low and the water was flooding it, come up with, working with the city, a drainage solution and a paver, if you wanted to use paver, or more concrete raised up a little bit. I think the city would have worked and will work with you on this to fix the drainage problem as well as stay compliant. And one of the things is when we look at, variances, the Delaware law, the training we receive, is we're talking minimal changes. We've had cases where we're talking 4 inches into a setback. That's the level where we're at. So what my feelings here are that if you can work with the city, again, we protect the land. We don't protect you or the city. We protect the land. We have to look out for the land. But if you would work with the city, come up with a drainage problem, because the lot cover is way over for anything we would be, in the realm of permitting. Again, this stays with your house, your lot forever after you guys sell it. So at that point, I'm just thinking, I think the city and the applicants can work together for a better solution than to approve this.
And let's not forget that the natural area, I mean, that's their coefficients, because we have the natural area is only at 20%.
Right.
And it's supposed to be a minimum of 50%. So we've got those two, in my mind, and I use the word grossly incorrect equations here, and I think that they both, in my view, to even consider looking at this again, they've both got to be brought into a realm of accurate, of compliancy.
Oh, absolutely,
Everything has to be.
And again, if you end up needing another variance for something that's ADA compliant, addresses the drainage, we, come back to the board. It would be another application at this point, but to the board, can I get a motion? If you want to hear, or,
I was going to ask, never mind, if I was going to ask
okay,
Fred
or
something.
Fred, you want to say?
We want to hear anything Fred has to say.
That's what I wanted to know was, if we want if the board is inclined to hear an alternative application from the Weeks, then they need to consent to that and say they'd like this matter to be continued, or are we saying we're prepared to vote to deny this application? I thought I was hearing that the board was expressing that it was unlikely that the application as submitted would be granted, However, you've paid your fee, we've noticed the hearing. If you want a decision today, you're entitled to get a decision. If, on the other hand, you were inclined to go back and think about ways that you could make your application, given the benefit of what you've heard, more acceptable to the board and to cooperate with the city in trying to design something new, then I think we're saying that we might be willing to grant a continuance of this application, or are we talking about something else?
Well, I guess part of the question is how long are we comfortable?
not
with it,
timeliness.
Yeah, with a continuance.
Timeliness, yes,
You know, if it's
exactly.
1 or 2 months, it's one thing. I don't think we want to continue it for 6 months. I think that's just bad.
So,
And there
Jen,
has to be an understanding that there are no promises.
yeah, of
If
course
that,
not.
if that
but
happens,
Jen-
it's a fresh slate for us and for them.
And we also need to acknowledge that this is really not this city's responsibility. I think the city's willing probably to lend their assistance, but they're not in a position to say at any point that what the Weeks might want to come forward with next is going to be acceptable to the board. They can't be responsible for any representations of that type. The Weeks, you'll have to control, if you come back to us, you'll have to be in control of what it is that you want. It'll be your responsibility to make that determination. So what I had envisioned was a continuance to the next month's meeting. But I don't know if that's what the board has in mind.
Well, we'll ask you, are you looking for, would you welcome a decision today, or do you want to go back and meet with your builder? Are you closed out with your builder?
I just have the feeling that this is a denial of our appeal.
No, what you're hearing is if we can take a motion to either approve or disapprove this variance, or we're saying we can continue it, which means to come back, hopefully next month,
Okay.
with a new plan that you've worked with the city on, and whether it has a variance need or not, the board does not know at this point, but whether you work with the builder, we're kind of saying that, here's an option, unless you say, no, make a decision, please, and
Who do we work with? If
you
our route is, okay, we'll take another builder, a contractor, and who do we go to? Can you please show us what needs to be taken out? What
Mrs.
needs
Weeks,
to be?
everything needs to be taken out. If your variance is denied, everything needs to be taken out. Everything, all the gravel, all the pebbles,
From,
everything you did in 2024, am I correct? If their variance is not granted.
It would go back to looking like the survey up there.
Right, well, I can't see it.
Maybe a lot of the pavers that were put in after 1997.
If I may, you would work with me, and I would sit down with you to go over, if you were to do a new plan, to guide you on what would be zoning compliant and what might need or facilitate another Board of Adjustment if there was a continuance. But you would work with me on a new design approach.
So you would have, and you may be able to get an administrative variance for the pavers that would take a wheelchair and get him into the house and out to the car and all that stuff. So there are options available to you. But I get the sense from this board that the option is not to leave it as it is. You don't have natural area, you have too much coverage. It's never going to fly, I don't think. But we understand the difficulty, and the city is willing to work with you, and they do have an administrative variance that will allow you to be able to have that ramp and the ability to get Mr. Weeks to and from the house. And I frankly think your contractor ought to do it for you and That's my personal feeling, which I guess doesn't matter.
And offering a continuance is quite unusual, I must say. This isn't something we do often. That I think you're finding that we have a very sympathetic view of your situation, and we have certain strictures that we need to decide on, ma'am. And so we're trying to find a way, if you wish to take it.
If you wish, right.
If you wish to take it, to perhaps find a way to do something, but
What, how much time do we have?
I would say a month to 2 months at max, so by August, end of August, fourth week of August, to give you some time.
So we could put it on for next month, and then if
they're not ready,
they're not ready, they could send us a letter and ask for an additional
month.
month.
And that would be max in my view. I think it actually should be next month, but I'm good with what you said, Fred.
I think next month would be the best.
So,
If
You
they
certainly
wish to.
would need to
If they
meet
wish
with,
it.
you certainly need to meet with the city as soon as possible and not wait too long to get started with the city. Or else we'll learn that there aren't measures being taken to address the situation, and it's not likely going to result in an altered application.
Our next meeting is July 22nd, just so you know. It's the fourth Monday of each month is our standard meeting.
Is an alternative for us to sell the property? Would that be an alternative?
You can't
Just
sell
sell
it the way it is now.
We can't advise you
We
on that.
can't,
No.
you know.
I think
That's
what-
not our
what-
deal,
what
sir.
We do want to make sure that you both understand is the current situation can't remain the way it is. It's not just simply
Right.
the walkways you were putting in earlier this year. You are way, way out of compliance with what the zoning rules require. And because of the fact that you started the work in February, the city is now on notice that you have much more coverage than is permitted by the city's rules. So it's not like you can just simply say, we'll withdraw the application, we won't finish the sidewalk, and we can just stay the way we are. What Corey is telling you, what we're telling you is that is not, you don't have that option. The option will be that the city will start fining you and other steps because you're so far out of compliance with the city zoning rules. So we can't advise you about whether you can sell it. The problem is that whoever buys it has the same issue. The city is now on notice that there is a violation of the rules, and the city has various steps it can take to force compliance. So you've got a major problem here, and whether you deal with it, whether you choose to put it up for sale and a new buyer has to deal with it, it is not going to remain the way it is. So that it's unfortunate that you're in that situation, but it is the situation you're in. We're offering you the option, if you do want to work with the city and work with a builder to find a way to get back into compliance, that will give you that option. If not, then we can rule on your application.
Today.
It's going to be denied, I think it's very clear. And then it's going to be back up to the city code enforcement to come to you and say, your variance application's been denied, you are in violation, here are the steps we, the city, can take to force you to get into compliance. So I don't want to give any more legal advice than that, but I do want to make sure, because I know that this is hard for people who don't deal with it and are not lawyers, but that's the situation that I'm in. And Alex, you should tell me if I've, on behalf of the city, if I've said anything incorrect.
That's correct. I would just add that there may also be some enforcement against the contractor.
Yes. I was going to ask you about that.
Too. That's why.
And one more thing, I mean, the subject of selling the properties come up, and it's not really a topic for us, but there is a requirement that sellers fill out a disclosure form, and one of the questions, or a number of questions that appear on that form would require you to disclose that there is an enforcement action underway. So you would be required to tell your buyers that you're in this circumstance.
So I'll come back to you two.
We will work.
You do want to work with the
Work with
city,
the
so
city,
we will,
yes.
we will go with a continuance
Yes.
till July,
July 22nd.
July 22nd.
It,
Thank you.
it's just so, I would say July 22nd would be too close if we could plead for,
Well, we're going to keep it there in case you are ready in July, and
Yeah,
if we
July,
could move it too,
August
but we're
would
not going to
have
move
been-
it beyond August.
yeah.
I have just a quick clarification for my account too. On the July 22nd date, it's not that any work has to be done, it's that a design plan kind of showing on the
Oh,
survey.
good point, Corey.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Is just put in place, and that you've met with me in the building and licensing department, and we find the easiest and best path forward for you to remove certain items to get you into compliance while being zoning compliant and the smoothest path forward for both of you.
But if the applicants were to bring the property into compliance, there would be no need for them to come back here. So what I'm envisioning is
Right.
that they might not get there, and they're going to come forward with some kind of an application that is de minimis compared to what they're requesting presently.
And Corey, that would be for, as you're working with them, you're working on both lot coverage and natural area. Is that correct for compliance?
Three lot coverage, natural area, two sides of the same
Side
coin,
yards.
and then the structures in the required yard areas.
Great.
And there would be
The
no,
whole, the whole shebang.
and there's no fines or violations at this point, correct?
That's correct. Right now, they're in one of the corrective action paths, and
Okay.
that they're actively working on doing what the city has given them as an option.
But if we had voted today and denied the variance, then the clock would start ticking tomorrow for those kinds of
Then the
actions.
zoning sections
Correct?
of violations and
Yes.
penalties
So
would.
they may not realize that it's
So-
a limbo grace period.
Right. So you understand that coming back with, we're not seeking construction, but it would be a design plan that you've worked with the city, okay?
Understood.
All right.
Do you want a motion to move?
Hang
to
on,
continuance?
Mr. Weeks.
The only thing I'm going to say is, and perhaps it's irrelevant, is that we are excellent occupants and citizens of Rehoboth Beach. And to lose us would be a big loss, I think, because we're very caring. We take care of the property. We try to do what's right, despite the fact that we didn't realize that we needed to get a permit. But that's the truth. I mean, you know, I regret that because that's not our nature to behave in that manner.
I think the board fully understands. We appreciate that, but again, if you understand our position to protect the land, or, you know, for forever.
No, you have
Yeah.
a job to do too.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not denying that.
Thank you. Yeah, we are going to get a
I move that
motion.
we continue this hearing until the July meeting.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you for
Thank you
taking the
very much.
time
We
and
appreciate
sit with us today.
you.
All right, good luck. All right, anyone, you need a
And
break?
Corey, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the Corey.
Yes, thank you.
You want to move right in, or you want to take a break, or I'm ready to go.
I need to stand up.
Motion to stand up, right? All right. Case number 2 today is 301 Scarboro Avenue. Okay, and Corey, let me know when you're ready. Thank you for helping out, Corey.
Yes. You can come up, sit down. You can.
Okay, we'll start with the presentation from the city.
Okay, this is case number 0524-06, Building Inspector's Report from June 7th, 2024. Location 301 Scarboro Avenue. Applicants are Aaron and Tony Talbert, 8 Raintree Road, Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, 19317. The owners are the same as the applicants. The subject, applicants seek relief from the following. City Zoning Code 270-43A, fences, screens, and walls. The nature of the request. The applicant is seeking a variance to 270-43A, fences, screens, and walls. The purpose of the application is to allow for the relocation of an existing 6-foot privacy fence to a front yard area as defined in 270-41. The property is located at 301 Scarboro Avenue, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The property is located in the R1 Residential District on lot number 10, block number 11, and Sussex County Tax Map parcel number 334-14.17-314.00. The property is a 50 by 100-foot corner lot with an existing single-family dwelling and an existing accessory swimming pool. Application background information. According to City of Rehoboth Beach records, the single-family dwelling and accessory swimming pool permit application was submitted January 24th, 2017. The building permit was approved and issued on February 6th, 2017, and the dwelling with its accessory swimming pool was completed and approved for occupancy on January 17th, 2018. The building inspector's Exhibit A shows the approved pool contracts and specifications. Page 2 states as part of the contracted scope of work, quote, EP Henry paver decking per drawing, end quote. This deck drawing is illustrated on page 9, titled Step 10 Pouring Concrete. Figure 6 is circled as the method approved. The specifications state, quote, concrete should be poured at least 3 feet around the perimeter of the hydrozone, end quote. This work was not completed as approved upon final inspection of the house, most likely due to side yard setback requirements. According to Sussex County property records, the property was then purchased from the original owner, Sur La Plage LLC, by the applicants on June 19th, 2018. The building permit was approved for the pool under City Code 206-4, which was part of the larger Chapter 206 pools adopted by the city on June 19th, 2015. This section states, all installations of pools and related equipment shall meet the requirements of the International Residential Code 2012, Appendix G, swimming pools, spas, and hot tubs, as adopted by the City of Rehoboth Beach. Under Appendix G of the 2012 International Residential Code, no minimum clearances are detailed around the water's edge. The appendix is silent on the issue. On December 20th, 2019, the City of Rehoboth Beach adopted the 2018 International Residential Code, which is currently used for all residential applications. Section R236 of the 2018 IRC states that the design and construction of pools and spas shall comply with the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. Under Section 305.2.10, poolside barrier setbacks, the 2018 ISPSC states, the pool or spa side of the required barrier shall be not less than 20 inches from the water's edge. Currently, this clearance is required of all new pools and spas constructed in Rehoboth Beach. Due to the date in which the pool and its required barrier, a minimum 4-foot fence, were approved, the clear space of 1.2 feet, which is approximately 14.4 inches, as shown on the final survey performed by Foresight Services on January 9th, 2018, was compliant with the building codes, as Appendix G did not provide minimum clearances around the water's edge. This clear space is likely less than 1.2 feet, as the survey uses measurements of the water's edge and the outside of the fence. Therefore, the thickness of the wooden members used to build the fence decreases the inside clearance. The existing 6-foot privacy fence was erected in its current location, 10 feet from the property line that runs parallel to Munson Street, due to the City Zoning Code 270-43A, which states any fence within a front yard area is as defined in 270-41 shall not exceed 42 inches in height. This is currently the section of zoning code being requested relief from by the applicants. The applicants have cited Sussex County Zoning Code Section 115-185, accessory buildings and structures, which states, "A walk space at least 3 feet wide shall be provided between pool walls and protective fences or barrier walls." Sussex County Zoning Code was adopted by the County Council on September 14th, 1982 by Ordinance 97. According to Sussex County E-Code 360 online, no amendments have been made to this section of code pertaining to swimming pools. An amendment was made to the term accessory building on October 10th, 2010 by Ordinance 2152. However, this amendment does not speak to swimming pools. Variance is requested. The applicants are seeking relief from the following provisions. 270-43A, fences, screens, and walls. This states, "A fence or screen not more than 3.5 feet in height above undisturbed ground level may project into or enclose any required front yard to a depth measured from the street line equal to the required depth of the front yard. Any fence or screen may project into or enclose other required yards, provided that such fences or screens do not exceed 6 feet in height above undisturbed ground level." The required front yard is clarified for corner lots under City Zoning Code 270-41 corner lot setback lines, which states, "In the case of a corner lot, a front yard, as provided for in each district, shall be required on each street on which the lot abuts." In addition to this code section, the term front is defined in 270-4 definitions, which states, "That side of a building which faces the street without regard to the principal place of entry." In the case where a building faces intersecting streets, parentheses, a corner, the side of the building facing the street on which the shorter lot dimension abuts is the front. If the lot dimensions abutting the street are equal, either side of the building facing a street may be considered the front. For this particular property, the side facing Scarboro Avenue is identified as the front, as well as the front yard, and is required to have the 15-foot building setback line assigned to that yard area. The side yard setbacks are assigned to the yard areas facing Munson Street and adjacent to Lot 11 as shown in Exhibit A. The front yard area facing Munson Street is recognized as a front yard per 270-41. However, it is not defined as the front per 270-4, so it is also recognized as a side, and its required setback is detailed in the city's side yard setbacks, not the front yard setback. Following this path a step further, in the city's zoning code, section 270-24, building setback line, note 2 states, "For a building built on a corner lot, the side that faces the street, which is not the front, shall have a minimum building setback line of 10 feet. This setback shall substitute for one of the 2 required side yards. The proposed relocation of the 6-foot privacy fence facing Munson Street to encroach the front yard area as detailed in the code sections above is in violation of the city's zoning code. If the fence is permitted by the Board of Adjustment to be relocated, there is another conflict of code the board members must be made aware of. Rehoboth Beach zoning code only permits fences of a maximum height of 42 inches to be located in front yard areas. For those properties incorporating a swimming pool, Section 305 barrier requirements of the 2018 ISPSC require a minimum barrier or fence height of 48 inches. It is the building inspector's responsibility to ensure board members are made aware of this discrepancy when determining a judgment. In conclusion, the proposed relocation of the existing 6-foot privacy fence to encroach the front yard area facing Munson Street would violate side setback requirements of a fence greater than 42 inches in height as detailed under 270-43A. The fence was erected at a time when the city of Rehoboth Beach did not have a specific clearance around the water's edge of a swimming pool, either from a zoning ordinance or an adopted building code. Thus, the 6-foot fence was erected 10 feet from the property line facing Munson Street. Currently, the city of Rehoboth Beach recognizes the 2018 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, which provides a minimum clearance of 20 inches around the water's edge of a swimming pool. Sussex County recognizes their zoning code, section 115-185, which provides a minimum clearance of 36 inches around the water's edge of a swimming pool. Should the Board of Adjustment wish to grant a variance, they must recognize that a required barrier for a swimming pool must be a minimum of 48 inches above finished grade, which exceeds the 42 inches as detailed in the city's zoning code 270-43A.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, anyone want to ask Corey questions on this? I do have a few.
Let me start.
as well, whenever.
What is the
Start.
relevance of this, of the Sussex County
Yeah.
rules here? Are they just instructive as opposed to prescriptive?
Persuasive.
This was included as it was mentioned in the applicant's application. And as it is a code, there's also building code that states when there are code sections that are vague or specific, you go with the specific one. Or if there's no code section versus a code section that you can use, then you go to the one section that you can use. I think in the case here where I could find, there was at the time of the construction a county zoning code that mandated 36 inches around the water's edge and the barrier. Rehoboth Beach was utilizing a zoning code, an appendix in a building code that was silent on the issue. So whenever we can, if we can't find something in our municipal code, the next step would be to check the county, and then if not, then check the state code.
Okay, but you're stating that almost in a hierarchical sense. I don't know if that's where Bill was going, but so is it city, county, state, international? That's what I'm trying to understand out of Bill's question.
No, just to clarify on that, Delaware courts would consider this county and the municipality
speak
to
up a
be.
bit, please.
Sorry, yes. Speak up a bit,
Is
sorry.
that on?
Can you hear me?
Pull it closer. There
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, much
Sorry.
better.
So the Delaware court would consider both the county and the municipality to be junior sovereigns to the state. So the state would preempt either the county or the municipality, but the county does not preempt the municipality. This is just persuasive authority, something to consider.
Okay.
Where I was going, if I understood you correctly, Corey, when this pool was in front of the city, there was no city regulation about the minimum width around the pool, correct?
Correct.
And so would the building inspector at that point, code approval, look to the county, or would they say there's no requirement in the city, and therefore, this was allowed under the city rules, even though there was a county rule, but the county rule was not binding?
Yeah, because this rule from the county comes from a zoning ordinance, it would be used as a guideline. And it's the building code that states it very clearly. In every single building code that we have adopted, Chapter 1 is very clear. If there are two conflicting codes, you go by the more restrictive one. If there are two codes, if a subject is mentioned in multiple code books, you go with the specific one. And if you have two different codes where one is silent on the issue but the other one is not, then you grab hold of that one. And it's a way to navigate codes where you either have conflicting ones are more general versus more specific, more restrictive versus more lenient, and when you don't have a code. So I included it in my report in that it seemed like there were no amendments made that I could find. So Sussex County Code did have that provision from the way it looks, from how I saw it, during the time of this building. And that was something that could have been cited as a regulation, as the county had use of it. And Rehoboth Beach was at the time using a code that was silent on the issue.
So even though you're saying that the building inspector at the time could have used it to cite the border around the pool, the fact they did not, therefore you cannot hold that against the applicant.
That's correct. Ultimately, Rehoboth Beach is the AHJ,
Okay.
the authority having jurisdiction.
Okay.
And I think what you said, Corey, was that it probably had to do with side yards, because you had to meet the Rehoboth, the city's
agree, yeah.
side yards setbacks.
And
So
our zoning codes trumped
Right, they
the
trumped it.
zoning code.
Exactly.
Had there been a provision in the actual building code,
Right.
like we do now for the 2018 ISPSC, then that has to be met for that clearance for building code.
Okay.
And that's 20 inches now.
For Rehoboth Beach, what we recognize is 20 inches. And that comes
Just from the edge of the pool?
Edge of the water.
the edge, from
Water's edge.
water's edge to a barrier of any kind. So that would include a house or a fence or some kind of obstruction, so that you have, there's 2 code sections, but they don't come from our zoning code, they come from our adopted building code. Sussex County seems to rely on their amendment of a zoning code to enforce the provisions of the 3-foot. But yes, you're correct. You need 20 inches currently between water's edge, and that's as close as we would allow you to put a fence or a house if you wanted to push the pool up next to, or as close as you could to something else.
If you were building today.
If you were building today.
You could put it farther away.
Absolutely. That's the bare minimum that
The
you
bare
can put
minimum,
something.
okay. That's what I want to make sure I understand that.
And then explain what happened here in your first 2 bullets, where you say that the plan as submitted said that there would be 3-foot concrete edge, but they didn't do it.
This I put in because it was called out in the applicant's application, but it was referenced as city documents. So I wanted to include that in my report so that you could see that it was also referenced and you had something to look at when it was referenced in their application.
But what I'm trying to understand is the plan said that there was going to be 3-foot. You said it was evident that it wasn't done, but it was still, the permit was still issued.
In the plan, under plan review, you have a copy of it, of the inspector's approval for those documents. And in it, yes, it had a minimum 3-foot, and that's fairly standard. You want a 3-foot walking area around a water's edge.
Explain to me what happens in the city if the building, the plans are approved. Is there any final, on pools, is there any final inspection that's done to make sure that it complies with what the plans were?
We have a couple inspections for pools. One of them would be a final inspection. That's correct.
Okay.
But what the city would be looking for would be that if it went from 3 feet, we would still allow it as long as they had 20 inches, so that they could have, if there was a change order. If plans change and they are large scale, then we require that the contractors submit a change order prior to an inspection. If it is something smaller, that it would not put a structural issue at risk or a safety issue at risk, then those ones are usually looked at inspection and discussed with the contractor during the inspection. This is one where I think that the emphasis of the zoning code and the 10-foot side yard was enforced. And when they staked out the line for the pools, those 4 corners, they didn't put them further inside, and therefore they had to go with a very, very small, I've been to the property and measured it myself, it's less than 1 foot on the side there. However, because our building code at the time it was silent on the issue, there was nothing that the building inspector could hold them to. It would have been with the property owner and their contractor for not doing the work that they.
Yeah, I was curious on the installation not meeting. I couldn't tell whether it was a structural issue. The homeowners now, I don't think, could answer that, because when they installed it, was it, I'm sure since it was a drop-in pool, there was a warranty on it of some. Did they? We don't care about the warrant. It's crazy to look back at this to say what happened here, because just drop it in and forget the warranty. Let's go.
And then, and this was done by the previous owner.
Right.
And then 5 months after, then the property was sold to the applicants.
Okay.
Yeah, these issues come up because a pool safety fence has a required height that exceeds an ornamental fence height, which could be located in the front yard. So this is not the first time this kind of thing has come up in the context of a final inspection or afterwards, that the fence that needs to surround the pool has to be higher than can be permitted in a front yard, or in this case, a side yard. That is the case here, right? It's a side yard, 10-foot setback. they could have a 3.5-foot fence, but a 3.5-foot fence doesn't meet the requirements for an enclosure.
Correct. And because it's a corner lot, it's a side yard, but it's also a front
front
yard,
yard.
but it's not the front.
Right.
You'll be experts on what a corner lot.
Okay.
Bill, do you have other questions?
Yeah, I guess the only other question I have, Corey, is there any concern on the city's part in terms of the drivers coming up, is it Munson, that where the, coming up to the corner in terms of if there is a 6-foot fence there and it's well beyond the 10-foot, well within the 10-foot setback, in terms of seeing pedestrians, seeing cars coming, I couldn't quite tell from the pictures whether that was a concern or not.
It's a valid concern. This one it's much farther back than the 20 feet. We have a code section when you have a corner, if you go on the axes of both curbs until they intersect, and then you were to draw a diagonal line there and swoop it over, that 20-foot on both sides can't be obstructed.
Yeah.
This fence would be much further back from
That's
that.
not an issue.
But it would be.
Can I just say factually, it's actually 50 feet,
You
and
can't-
it's,
You will in a second. Yeah, no, you will in a second. You'll have more than your opportunity. We just haven't sworn you in yet.
It's
is
well
all.
beyond the 20-foot.
That's correct. It would be a non-issue.
Okay, thank you.
Well, only if we approve a variance, it
If-
would be a
if-
No,
non-issue.
but I was asking on the safety
Okay.
side of,
Well, I mean, that's why the code is the way it is, because the safety side, and there's been 2 granted on corner lots recently that don't meet code requirements.
okay, thank you.
6-foot fences all around the pool, so.
I'm done,
Okay,
thanks.
Jan, you have any questions?
Well, I don't know if it's a question, Corey, but I have, pools are near and dear to my heart. I happen to live across the street from a pediatrician and who was appalled by the pool ordinances in Rehoboth. And I have kids that live in Florida and are also appalled by the pool ordinances in Rehoboth. And so what I wonder is, actually our pool ordinances don't really encourage safety for children. And the same thing and a 6-foot fence does not encourage safety for children. What encourages safety for children is a fence around the pool itself, and it doesn't hook to the house unless you have warnings, alarms and all kinds of stuff. And I have Florida's law with me, and I have the American Association of Pediatricians. Neither require a 6-foot fence, by the way. A 6-foot fence isn't going to keep any kid out if they know there's a pool there. What keeps them out is the fence is locked and they can't get into it. And so I wonder if the city has ever considered looking at the American pediatric recommendations or even state law like Florida, which has got a zillion million swimming pools.
Well, that's a rhetorical question.
That's a rhetorical
Right,
question.
right.
But every time a pool issue comes up, I think about this. And because my neighbor, her grandson went from the house, 18 months old, wandered out and fell into the pool. And if somebody hadn't heard him from upstairs and ran down and pulled him out, he would be dead. And so and her whole yard is fenced in with a 6-foot fence. Doesn't matter, And 2 kids died last year in Sussex County under those circumstances. Anyway, that's just my thing. You don't need a 6-foot fence. You need a fence around the pool itself.
But that isn't required by Rehoboth.
But that's not required by Rehoboth or Sussex County, as Pete Schwarzkopf has reminded me. So,
Right. Thanks, Jan. Corey, if the fence were moved to 3 foot away, that's what we're saying here, 3 foot, right, from the water's edge.
If we were to go with the county's
Right.
zoning ordinance,
Then how much space would be left, or is it 7 foot to the sidewalk?
well, right now it shows the fence is 10 feet from.
Right.
And again, it's the way that the survey shows, it's from the water's edge from one length, and then the other length is from the outside of the fence.
Got
Not
it.
the inside, so that means the inside's a little less. If they were to remove, we could say they're about 10 inches or so on the inside. If they were to move that over to 3 feet, then you would go from your 10-foot to a little more than 2 feet.
Okay, all right, thank you. No, we're okay with that. And again, if this variance were approved, it's either a 4-foot to a 6-foot fence. Even,
That is the one thing I would say, that the minimum fence height would have to be 48 inches.
and then we would have to grant a variance for the front yard 3.5-foot fence height, which is required in a front yard.
Correct.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
you would be, yes.
Correct.
Max.
Which is,
6-inch.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
6-inch variance.
That's crazy that
No,
we've
I
seen
understand.
codes like,
No, no, that's what I have
Okay,
down
that's all
too.
the questions I had for you, Corey. Thank you. Very nice report, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to start, again, thanks, Corey, for such a detailed report, just fantastic. So the foresight survey in January 2018, everything was compliant at that time, that you know?
That's correct.
Okay, and the fact that the 3-foot around didn't seem to bother anybody at the time? That's kind of what we've decided based on Bill's question also, right? The 3-foot
I will
around
say
the
that
pool.
in my time here, I have witnessed other pools that are in a similar situation.
Yeah, because you had to decide whether you're going to go by the side yard setbacks or you were going to go with the pool dictums, right? So there was a decision made. I see December 2019, the city adopted the IRC, which is still in use. And then the section 236, you said pools must comply with the ISPSC, section 305-210. And is the applicant's 6-foot fence grandfathered if they do nothing? If they do nothing at all, are they allowed to keep the 6-foot fence because of the 20-foot or the
Correct.
20-inch?
Yes, it'd be the
But
same
the
thing
fence
if
is, the fence is currently compliant.
Right, that's what I'm
the
asking.
fence
Well, it's
is
not
currently
grandfathered
compliant.
because it's compliant.
Okay,
I think you meant the clearance.
Yeah, the
Yes,
clearance
yes.
around the pool.
so if they do nothing,
It would be the same if you had an older house and you had interior stairs that weren't compliant with today's codes.
okay. And am I correct in that, I was reading through your report again, you said September 1982, county adopted Sussex zoning code, no amendments have been made to re-swimming pools. So I'm asking you, are the applicants incorrect in citing the section 115, 185 concerning accessory buildings to justify their walkway? Are they incorrect about that doesn't justify them because it doesn't apply?
Well, okay, they're making it, that's just a persuasive argument, I think, and we'll hear from them.
Okay, well, I'm asking from your perspective, is that an accessory building?
They're in the
is
same
it-
section of code, the Sussex County Code that is under accessory buildings and swimming pools are under the same section.
Okay,
But it would not be binding.
I saw that. Okay, not binding. Okay. So it's not anything that the board has to be sure that we are keeping track of?
That's correct.
It's just part of their presentation?
It's
From your
a
perspective?
zoning ordinance
Okay.
by Sussex County.
Okay, now I have, where could they put a 42-inch, or it has to be a 48-inch fence no matter what? Is that what we're saying?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So where could they put a 48-inch fence and still meet city zoning right now?
By our codes today, they would need a minimum of 20 inches from the
Okay.
water's edge to the interior side of the fence or the barrier.
So they're asking for the 8-foot is an ask. That's not a requirement or,
That's correct.
okay.
But could they do it if they wanted to? Would they
They
be
get a
approved?
variance.
Without a variance, 8 foot away?
Not at 6 foot in height.
Not at 6 foot height, but at 48-inch height?
Not at 48-inch height because of our zoning code this is something that we're looking at correcting as from the city standpoint. It's where our zoning code and the adopted building code conflict. So if they wanted to push a fence back, they could. Our zoning code would keep them at 42 inches, although our adopted building code would force them to build at 48
Well,
inches.
which,
Because it's a pool?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, well, I'm fine with that.
So-
Okay.
okay, so they could build a 48-inch fence 20 inches, but they still need the variance, don't they, because they're in the side yards?
Yes, that's correct.
That's right. So, all right. So my next question you've answered. I said, do we have to be concerned about the 48 inches versus the 42 inches? And you've just answered that. It's got to be 48 if it's anything. So, and that's how we rectify the disconnect between the city and the county, that the city says 42 and the county says 48?
That's the city's own zoning code.
Right.
This distinction between county and city is the clearance, the walking area between
Okay.
the pool and the fence.
Okay.
Our code would say 20 inches today,
And
and
Sussex
Sussex
says
would say
36.
36 inches.
So we're,
They don't conflict because the county's code doesn't apply. So
It's guidance.
they might be different, but they're not
Okay.
in conflict. Whereas the IBC, or is that the right term?
The ISPS, the swimming pool code.
The swimming pool code does conflict for the reasons you just stated.
well, why doesn't the 20 and the 36 conflict then? Maybe you can explain that
Because
to
the
me.
36 is county code,
Yeah.
which
We're not
doesn't
bound by
apply.
the
Because we're not
in the
bound by
county.
the county.
Okay, okay, all
Actually,
right.
We're the zoning authority.
It's not conflicting with ours. It's different.
Okay. Continuing. So here's what I think I know. I think what they want to do is build a perimeter walkway around the pool and yard walkways as shown in their drawing. In addition, they want to build a brand-new 6-foot fence 8 feet closer to the Munson property line, the Munson line, their property line on Munson.
Correct.
So those are their wants as far as you know. I will ask them the same questions, but,
To my knowledge, yes.
okay. And that's what the variances that we're talking about answer that. Would their walkways be zoning compliant? Let's say we approved all this. Would the walkways be compliant in terms of natural area and lot coverage?
So long as the natural area stayed at minimum 50%, because walkways are not, they're not defined as structure, they're allowed,
Okay.
just like off-street parking, and to be in the setbacks.
Would that be a sidewalk?
Sidewalk.
Define that, sidewalk.
As definition of a
Sounds weird,
sidewalk.
a sidewalk around the pool. Okay.
Because I saw the Foresight drawings that they were at 56.4%.
Well, now there's a difference there. We
Okay.
have in our own section of sidewalk, on the definition of it, I think it's the last sentence in that, walkways around pools, as well as through mazes or gardens, or I believe it's through mazes, shall be defined as structure. So there would have to be some kind of natural separation between the pool, the coping, and a walkway, but to our own code, any walkway that there's no distinction of hardscape with a pool and a walkway around a pool, that's seen as structure.
Okay. But am I correct? I saw the Foresight said that they had 56.4% natural area right now. So that gives them, in my math, about 1,600 square feet left to do, to play with if they wanted to.
That's correct, and still keep that minimum
To
50%.
get to 50%, because they're already, they're okay. And lot coverage is okay. They were at 43.6%, but they're already over the 40% max, right?
The
Am I wrong
total
there?
coverage separates the structural coverage from the drive strips and front walk. And those drive strips and front walk, this is common for Foresight to do. We have them separate that out because those would be defined as sidewalk
Okay.
and driveways, which are not defined or recognized as structure. So those are allowed to exist in whatever percentage they may be, so long as the structural lot coverage remains under 40% and the natural remains above 50.
Okay. What is their lot coverage then?
39.8%, that's the
39.8.
1991.
Is that going to be impinged by these walkways?
The walkways around the pool, yes.
So that would
There's a
force them
walkway
to
around
be
the pool.
over.
That would, the walkway around the pool would go into the setback if it encroaches the 10-foot, and it would be included in the structural lot coverage.
So that would put them over 40, that would put them over 40%, wouldn't it? So am I wrong here, that they need that their lot coverage would be incorrect if they,
That's correct. If there wasn't a separation of natural area to differentiate a sidewalk from the walkway around the pool, which does happen, sometimes people bring their walkways close to
The timeout, people actually put like a half inch of sand or grass.
there's nothing to cling to in the code as far as a minimum,
We're not saying anything.
but there has to be some kind of separation there.
Wow, okay.
and
I
their
but I
plan,
see where you're going.
and their plan says there will be? Is that, I mean, you don't have to, if you don't know right now, that's okay. I'm trying to figure out if we've got the full picture here of what variances they might need to do what they think they'd like to do, and tell us about in a bit.
That's correct. I would work with them on that walkway to make sure they were zoning compliant.
Okay.
I spoke only to the fence as the variance that was applied for was only for the fence.
Because 39.8% is pretty dang close, which sounds like that was the plan when it was built, to make
Correct.
sure.
That's
that
usually
they
what
were
they're
just
built.
a hair under, yeah. And the side yards, I know we need 16, a total of 16, and at least 6 on each side. So, but when I add up what I see in this picture, it's 7.2 plus 8.2. I don't know if that matters, if it's too close to call, or what. You're talking about.
You don't necessarily have to have 6 and 16. You can, the minimum on the side for the side yard on Munson Street here would be 10 feet. Based off of our structures and
right.
required yard areas, you can have a 2-foot for chimneys, and that's what this is, where you see the 8.2. That's a cantilever chimney for a gas insert, so that's allowed by our code.
Okay.
Everything else would be 10 feet, and then on the other side, they would have to have a minimum of 6 feet. And what they show to the HVAC unit is 7.2.
0.2, yeah, okay. I'm just asking. What could they do without a variance? They could replace their current 6-foot fence with a 48-inch?
That's about it.
That's
With
what they
for
could
the-
do.
For the fence, you're correct.
And they could build some level of walkway since they have some spare.
They can take a walkway and they can have it go to the pool at a right angle or
Right.
something that would just differentiate it from being seen as a walkway around a pool or
Right,
kind of a
'cause-
patio.
Because they
sometime.
have about 1,600 square feet left for the natural area, from what we said. So hypothetically, I mean, I just ask for options. They could build or a walkway without the pool and make and do a 48-inch fence where it is. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or-
Yeah, the natural area currently on the survey, January 9th, 2018, is at 2,817 square feet, so they have 317 square feet
Oh.
left to use.
Okay. I guess I had the wrong percentage. Okay. That's all that I have right now. Thanks for all your information.
Thank you, Edie. Okay, we're going to turn it over to you. We're going to swear you in, but first, compliment you. Thank you for the letter and the photographs. We don't always get that. It helps out a lot.
It does.
So thank you. So I'm going to have Mr. Townsend swear you in.
So name and address for the record, please.
Our permanent address?
The address you'd like to give us.
Sure. I'm Tony Talbert, and we're 8 Raintree Road, Chadsford.
Okay. And do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, so we try and proceed in an orderly fashion, but sometimes it's virtually impossible for us not to get testimony from 2 different witnesses at the same time. Would you, for the record, give us your name and address, please?
Yes, hi. I'm Erin Talbert. Address.
Same address?
We're married, but I'm going to give my address as 301 Scarboro Avenue, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Welcome to Rehoboth.
Thank you.
And do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, and you may want to pull that mic a little closer to you.
So we see who the good politician is in this.
Yes, we do. We got a technician and a
So
politician.
we're going to open it up to you to present your case and your exceptional practical difficulty.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time and attention. This is important work, what you do, and it's very detailed. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the rules and what's written. My wife will speak for herself, but I know she, as a member of our local school board, does, it reminds me a lot of what you're doing is that people don't get to see the amount of attention you spend on these things, so thank you. A bit on our background, we both grew up not coming to the shore on the East Coast. I grew up in Hawaii, and my wife is from Baltimore. They went down to the Outer Banks. And when we started our family here on the East Coast, we wanted to find a beach community that was the place for us to have our summer vacations and a home that we could have, for generations, hopefully, with our family. And so we looked at all the shore communities in New Jersey and Delaware, and Rehoboth was the place we fell in love with, in part because of the code and the zoning that maintains the level of treescape you see, the sidewalks, and everything's not built up to the edges like you see in New Jersey. So we appreciate the codes, and we're a believer in maintaining the purpose of the aesthetic of what they do for our community. So we chose Rehoboth in 2018. We bought this house. It had the pool, it had the fence. Our children were younger at the time. I think I recall asking the seller if we could move the fence because it was clearly so close, and he just said, well, no, because that's the code. So we lived with it. We lived with it as our children grew up, and we could see that the fence is actually a natural attraction for kids to try to play on. It's clearly not good for safety to have one side of the pool have a barrier up against it, but naturally kids want to play on the 6-inch precipice, and even as they grew into teenagers, that's still then the place where they try to play chicken and push someone off. And it's not safe, and we constantly have to police that. And we were reminded just the other week when my sister-in-law came with her now small children, and they were in the pool the entire time. And so for us, it was clear there is a safety issue here. And as we started to look into it, we saw that there were some differences in terms of what the code said in the Rehoboth Code, and then clearly what other pool standards say in various jurisdictions. And for context, this is in the context of this, why now? Why are we thinking of doing this fence now? It's in the context of a larger investment in the property to address several things. I'm a commercial real estate investor by profession, so I travel around. We own property all over the country. We own hotels, apartment buildings, but that's a flexible job. And as our kids are getting older, my wife also is flexible, so we find ourselves spending more time here, and apparently my wife now lives at 301 Scarboro.
That was under oath that she said that
she
too,
did
by
say
the way.
that. But we feel it's an appropriate time to address the safety issue and then also invest more in the property in terms of dealing with the aesthetic of the backyard, but also, like the prior folks said, we too have a drainage issue. Our neighbor, this is not the purpose of today's discussion, but our neighbor to the opposite of the Munson side built the new house. They tore down their old house and rebuilt, and their new house is now about a foot higher in terms of where the old house was, and we get flooding, we get runoff. It's killed all the grass on that side of the house, and I'm glad to hear there may be some options to explore dealing with that, and as part of this project, we want to do that. To clarify, our conception of the sidewalk was to comply with the remaining lot coverage area, so to be under the guidelines or the code there. If it's 1,600 feet, our intent is to comply with that, in addition to comply with the space between the sidewalk and the pool deck. So yes, that would be our intent, and so our real variance request is just about the fence in the context of a larger project, but the rest of the project we would anticipate complying with the code.
Can I stop you there real quick? You said
Yes.
it's just about the fence
In terms of, sorry, variance request.
for variance. Okay. May I ask you, would you put in that sidewalk if the variance was approved to move the fence to some, would you then put pavers or a sidewalk, we'll probably call it, we'll call it a sidewalk at this point,
Yes,
between the fence and the pool edge?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the continue.
Yeah, and so in terms of the hardship, one, I think it's a safety hazard, and if we look to what standards may be to address the safety hazard of having a fence so close to the pool, the county regulation Sussex, it's a 36-inch setback, and these are minimums, not a maximum. Right. These are minimums. And that 36-inch distance is pretty consistent. The state of Delaware pool code also, it's similar. In terms of the fence height, I think it was mentioned before, while 48 inches may be the current Rehoboth standard for pools, again, that is also a minimum. And for public pools, it's recommended that it be quite a bit higher. I think that's a more appropriate analogy for where we sit. Mr. Brand, I believe you said you were in Country Club Estates and probably know that corner of Munson and Scarboro is incredibly heavy traffic, both in terms of cars and foot traffic. And the purpose of having a 6-foot fence as opposed to a 48-foot fence is not just to keep kids out, but if the state code says that the purpose of a fence is to minimize the entry of unauthorized or unwary persons. And our personal belief is that if it's clear that there is a pool and people are walking by that site all the time, we're not always there. And while we like to be, I don't think we can control people coming in.
And just to clarify, there's no need for a variance for that height. If you wish to retain a 6-foot, it's where it lands on the ground is the issue.
I thought there was a variance for the height.
No,
Well,
you
I
can
bel-
go down the 4-foot
If they move it.
if,
But it's on the side yard setback, and I didn't think, on a corner lot, I thought the fence couldn't exceed 6, it couldn't be as high as 6 foot. Go ahead.
Yeah, if the fence were to be moved in its location, currently, they can remain where it is, and they can
At
have it
6
anywhere.
foot, but if he wants
okay,
to
so
move
clarify
it.
maybe my
So if
misunderstanding.
he moves
If it moves
it
an
has to go
inch,
down.
That's right.
Huh?
One at a time.
Sorry, sorry.
Do you want to ask your?
If it moves and encroaches beyond the 10 foot of where it is now, it will need a variance.
Okay.
okay. For minimum of what height?
Anything above our zoning code of 42 inches.
Thank you. Okay. I'm clarified now. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, so we found ourselves in a conflict, which is to say if we address the safety concern we had of moving it further from the pool, that then the height becomes lower than we feel is appropriate for where it's located.
Got it. Thank you.
That's our perspective. So, yeah, and I did just want to, why the height? And does the height cause any view lines or safety concerns or aesthetics for things aside from the pool? I think I wanted to just clarify that point. One, we think the 6-foot height is important, and the state of Delaware, their pool code recommends a 6-foot height for public pools. And again, the analogy we think here is public because of the level of traffic that goes by this area and the purpose of keeping that pool obscured so that kids aren't tempted to try to go in when we're not there. In terms of the safety for the intersection, which we recognize is a very high-traffic area. We looked at that carefully from a lot of different angles, and we're aware of the minimum setbacks. It's about twice the minimum requirement. It's a 50-foot, the fence would start 50 feet back from the curb, which is depicted on page 55 of the packet. And there are examples that we saw in town in terms of a fence of similar height that we're talking about on a corner lot, which was actually closer to the sidewalk that we're requesting. And we think from a safety perspective with the intersection, that visually it looks like that's not a problem, and aesthetically we thought it didn't do any harm to the neighborhood. So I'm going to let my wife add whatever she wants to say.
Yes.
I think Tony's covered most of our points. I just want to add one other point of the experience of people using the sidewalks. I think that's of real importance because I walk these sidewalks every day with my dog and my kids and my beach chair. It's an unusually wide sidewalk. If you cross over Munson and keep going, cross over Scarboro and keep going on Munson, the grassy area, not on the house side, but the curb side, we'll call it, is generally 2.5 feet. In this particular area, it's actually 4.5 or 5 feet. You can tell in the pictures that we've included how oddly wide it is. Liz recently just planted 3 trees there. There's lots of space. So it's an unusually spacious area. I think this is important is wherever if we were to be so lucky as to move the fence out, I think the real reason is you don't want to make it a bad experience for people, enjoying the neighborhood in favor of the resident. It should be good for all. And I just think it's an incredibly spacious area given the extra large curb side. So I just wanted to tack that on because that's
with
important.
that, thank you. I would ask though, the city has specific measurements from, I don't know if it's the center of the street or, whether it's a wide sidewalk or a shorter sidewalk. That doesn't come into play, right? The property is still the property.
The property line ends where the property line ends,
Right.
and then the city right-of-way takes over.
Okay.
And we have the city has its own codes under curbs and sidewalks that dictates minimum and maximum widths, and the tree code dictates, at least for future
Right.
plantings.
But that does not change their property.
No, the private property?
Correct.
The-
That's
no,
what I'm saying,
that doesn't- that
just
does not
so
change the
it's
private
an
property.
understanding.
It's not a
Yeah.
technical point, it's an
Yeah.
experiential point.
Okay.
That green curb area is often much smaller. It's
Got it.
unusually large on this block,
Okay.
which creates, if you were to walk that section of street, it's much more spacious than other areas. That's it. It's just,
Okay.
it's an
But
aesthetics
since
and
the
an
city owns
experience.
that, they could change that at any time.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't taken forever, just that it's going to be that way.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. Or you may continue. Well,
No, I
Oh,
think we've
we
made
good?
our main
Okay.
points and are happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Just going back to when the pool was built, have you seen any structural issues by not having on the side that's up against the fence that would require or need, I mean, the pool's been there 7 years now? Yeah.
I'll comment since I do most of the pool maintenance. No, I don't think so. The two issues we have that I think are related to that concrete apron, we'll call it, not being built. I don't know if there's water issues under the pool. The lights I have to replace unusually frequently, so I don't know if water's seeping in other ways. They're actually expensive, the inner pool lights, so that's unusual. We've owned other pools.
Okay.
And the other problem we're having is the actual pool apron that is there. The pavers are not reinforced with anything. It's the fence that's holding them. So a number of them are tipping because there's nothing backing them. They're just
no
free
structural-
EP.
okay.
They
EP
look like
Henry
they were
pavers.
kind of cut short in their.
You can tell it's not what was intended.
Yes. Okay.
And the pavers are kind of askew and not, the integrity of them.
Have you ever needed to contact the pool company that manufactured it for any reasons?
Just to replace the lights.
Just the lights? Okay.
And it was not under warranty.
A question on your request for the variance is, it goes beyond, what's needed. I was kind of curious as to why you didn't request the bare minimum since your hardship is safety related. why you didn't ask for, and you asked to move it all the way out as far as you could, well, not as far as you could go, but much further? Reason?
I have two reasons. Tony may have additional. The main reasons are, we assumed we probably wouldn't get a 6-foot fence that close. If we did, I think there's some room for, it's not a negotiation, I realize that, but I think that there's a range of possible things here that would improve the situation.
Okay.
We went for what we'd really like, which would be to have that use of that yard, and recognizing that we'd probably need to landscape. If the fence were lower, we'd want to landscape to provide some foliage and privacy. That side of our house, it's not really obvious in the pictures, is all glass. It's the master bedroom area, so it's very like visible. So we would be needing to landscape, which would take 4 to 6 feet deep of trees and foliage to landscape. In that case, the other reason is there's a wonderful tree at the back, and it's marked at the back right corner, and a fence would need to be on one side of it. It's fine. We've been nurturing that tree since it was planted, and it would need to be to the inside or the outside. So we went to the outside.
Okay. Okay. And just double check, do you rent this property?
No.
Not
You
at all.
not? Okay. Question for you on the house you mentioned. Are they windows, sliding glass doors that's there? Are they fixed windows?
They're fixed.
Okay, so there's no safety issue with opening up a sliding glass door and?
Not there.
There is an exterior door.
Right there.
Okay.
Yes, and above the door in the interior, there's a pool alarm on the top.
Okay, I was just afraid you were coming here for a safety issue. There's 2 windows to your, I guess, master bedroom. They look
They're fixed.
kind of dangerous to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, they were my question. Oh, wait, I may have one more.
Did you have any?
No, I'm good with questions. Okay.
Could I
Sorry,
defer to Tony to answer
yeah,
if
and
you had
just-
more to add to your previous question?
I just wanted to add to what Aaron was saying. Why ask for the distance and what the height is? It was our understanding that we could do a fence right on our property line at 42 inches. Correct. Okay. So from our perspective, we could move the fence there and have it be much lower, but we would have a safety concern based on the pool and where it's located. I didn't feel comfortable that would keep kids out or people from using the pool when we're not there. So to me, 6 feet is a standard. I mean, when we have pools at hotels, I mean, we need a 6-foot fence. So it was the combination of coming more to the curb, maintaining the safe height. We did back off from being right on the property line to a place 2 feet back where we thought it doesn't negatively affect the aesthetic of the neighborhood, given the height of what we're asking for and the surrounding area. So that was our logic.
Okay, thank you. Bill, any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Talbot, you referred to the large tree, which is, I can see in the pictures. What are the options? If 8 feet, obviously the pool, the tree's going to be inside the fence. If we wanted to cut back on the 8 foot, your negotiation point, do you know what the options are in terms of given the location of that tree?
That tree is located approximately equidistant. It's approximately right in the middle of the 10 feet. So it's, we could,
One side or the other?
well, yes. What is your question? Maybe I didn't answer.
I'm trying to you're asking for 8 feet, I think. If I go back to the,
Are you asking, Bill, what would be the measurement inside, if the tree was outside the fence?
or you have the 8 foot, so if the tree were on the outside, what would that be, 6 feet?
It would probably be approximately 4 feet, 4 to 5 feet.
Okay. All right, thank you. I didn't have any other questions.
Jan?
But you're not going to cut down the tree will stay. Okay.
We'd like to keep the tree.
Yes, we would
And
like
not
not to
impinge its
disturb the
growth,
tree.
which
And
is-
Yeah.
it'll either be inside the fence or
Or
outside
in
the
or
fence.
out.
Exactly.
Yes.
Any other questions?
No.
Yep. That was one of my questions, is what is the measurement if it's inside the fence? And you've answered that 4 to 5 feet. Has anyone ever used your pool without your knowledge that that you found information or evidence that someone's been in your pool and fooling around without your being there?
Just our neighbors who pranked us one time and took pictures, but no, not that we know of,
And so you,
in honesty. But we might not know. But no.
Right.
Yes.
We have had video of people trying to break into
Other
our
people
house.
trying to break into our house.
but-
well, that
Not-
isn't
not
what I
swimming.
asked, but that's fine to add that information.
So we haven't seen them in the pool, but yeah, yes.
And I'll ask you the same question I asked the previous people, which is, what plans have you considered if we don't grant the variance? What are you going to do?
If you don't grant the variance at all, and our option is to keep what we have, we will be replacing the fence. The fence is failing, the latch doesn't work, it's old, it's unsightly. So I guess we would replace the existing fence, or we would consider, well, no, we need a variance to even do,
I guess and I don't know if
We
this
have
is a
no other
variance.
option. Right? There's no other option.
Well, I'm a little unclear in this point, and maybe this is a question for Corey. If we moved the fence closer to the sidewalk, because there is a pool, is 48 inches the height that is allowed?
Still a variance.
Or is that a variance? Is that a variance?
Anything that moves the fence away from the 10-foot place where it is now, anything that moves it toward Munson, is that correct, Corey? Anything that moves it toward Munson requires a variance.
Well,
Any fence height above 42 inches that would
above
be moved
42.
closer to Munson Street would require a variance.
Requires a variance.
But just moving it to Munson Street would not require a variance,
If it
not
was
above
42
42.
inches.
as long as it's not above
Above
42.
42.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But the pool.
It has to be 42 or higher because it's a pool.
No,
48.
48 or higher because it's a
Sorry.
pool.
So, yes.
So back
so
to your question, we don't really have any other option
Okay,
other
I'm
than
just-
to replace
I'm just
exactly what
asking
is
one.
there, which is why we're here at the zoning board today.
I understood Corey telling us earlier that that issue is unclear because you've got the pool saying 48 and you've got the city saying 42. And I guess I can ask Alex, does the city have a view about which it would be?
Just adding,
Not 45.
yeah, just adding one thing to what Corey had just said, that there is an administrative variance process. So the fence can move up to 12 inches through an administrative variance. That's another option here. But the city does not have a view on that.
So they could move it 12 inches with an administrative variance, but if they want to move it more than that, you don't have a view yet about whether it's 42 or 48. That would not require a variance, if they were to move it closer to Munson.
So the pool needs to have a higher fence for safety purposes in the pool code. And so they would need a variance to move that fence and keep that height.
Yeah. But they don't need a variance if they move it to where it would be now and make it 48 inches. Is that correct?
48 or 42.
42.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Because there's a pool. So a pool requires a 48-inch fence, correct? I don't know I forgot, the code now does not essentially require you to put your fence practically in the pool. I don't know how you've used it all these years. But, so if they moved it where the code allows a side yard fence and it was 48 inches high, as the code allows, would they need a variance to do that?
Yes,
Yes.
And why? Because it's not 42?
correct.
Yes.
But moving it is not the issue. It's the 42 versus 48.
Right.
Okay,
'Cause it's in
that's
that
what
setback.
I
It's-
understood.
It's in
I
the
just
front
wasn't-
yard setback.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
No,
But moving
even
it,
though it's a pool. 'cause
All right,
you've got
one at a
curve.
time, one at a time.
but moving it is an issue if you're, moving it is an issue if you're trying to make sure that I'm not saying this well, I'm sorry. I've got to come back to it, I think.
Okay.
I've got to.
Because I don't think moving it is
All right,
an issue.
let's, at this point, is everyone done their questions?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Let's see. So I asked Corey a question, and I promised I would ask you folks as well, so I was sure. So what you want to do is, I asked him if he understood that this was what you wanted to do, and I promised I would ask you the same question. You want to build a perimeter walkway around the pool and some yard walkways, and you want to build a brand-new 6-foot fence 8 feet closer to the Munson property line. Those are your bottom line issues, is that correct? Okay. Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah, don't let
looking
Edie,
like you
don't let Edie tell you, yeah.
no, I mean,
That is what we're asking. I don't know if we're requesting a variance for the walkway. I believe that would comply with existing code and rules. The variance we're requesting.
I wasn't asking about variance necessarily, because
I just wanted to clarify.
Sure, that's good. But what would be affected, of course, would be lot coverage or natural area, perhaps, that Corey would have to deal with, because you were getting close to one of those.
Yeah,
lot
it would be
coverage.
our intention to
lot
comply
coverage.
with that.
To be under 1,600
Yes.
square feet for the
Right.
additional walkway.
Right. Oh, I know what I was going to say earlier. The fence could be moved. The only time it wouldn't need a variance, back to your question, Jan, be if you use the administrative variance. Is that correct? You use the administrative, or the administrative, whatever you called it.
Yeah, they could be up to 1 foot.
Okay, so they could move it 1 foot and have it be 42 inches. No?
It can't go down,
Oh, it has to be the same height.
yeah, because it's around the
They-
pool.
Well,
Okay.
they could go down from
could go to
6 feet to
48.
40, yeah,
On 48,
but not
down to
below
42.
48.
But we don't worry then about the Rehoboth Code that says anything higher than 42 inches requires a variance
That's,
in a front yard.
that's the variance that they would be giving, the
That would be the
administrative variance.
Oh, the
Administrative
administrative
variance.
does that, okay. That answers
We
my
would
question.
follow that process.
Okay, that answers my question. I don't have any other questions for the applicants, perhaps someone else does.
Well, I will just comment, I've lived in Rehoboth for almost 50 years, and kids jumping in swimming pools in town has never been an issue. Breaking in houses, that's a whole nother story. But that's not really that big of an issue. But jumping in swimming pools hasn't, and I have very, strong feelings about pools because of Florida.
All right, thank you, Jan. Okay, and there's no one from the public here, so I'm gonna have to ask if anyone's going to speak to it. So at this point, we are going to close down our commentary, and the board will discuss it, and you'll get to hear, like we said last, you'll get to hear our discussions and hopefully a motion to approve or deny the request.
Mr. Brandt, would you like us to return to the?
No, you can sit.
Okay.
You can stay there, yeah. We'll open it up to,
Well, as I said before, I mean, I have 3 boys. I can't even imagine, one of them probably couldn't even fit on that little walkway. And I honestly don't have a problem with moving the fence. But I do have a problem with it being 6 feet.
interesting. So I do not have a problem with it being 6 foot. I do think there is a safety issue, but I do not see the need to move it as far as the applicants requested, closer to the sidewalk. I would say, why can't we just do the bare minimum and still give them the 6-foot fence? Again, I know we need a variance there. And again, it could be 6 foot, it could be 5 foot. I don't know if you can get, whether that drives them into a custom fence or what. But I do think the pressing need here is the safety issue. And it sounds like we are set back from the corner of Munson. What I'm staring at, I'm just staring at the pool as I'm speaking here. There's no issue on visual, but I do think the request is to move it too close to the sidewalk. And I would like to see, give them the fence height for the security and safety, but make it, give them something, because both sides, there's very, very narrow around that pool. And I mean, honestly, no, I don't know how the pool got put in the first place. It just seems crazy that got approved, but that's not your issue. I mean, I even had questioned, why didn't you just put a deck over the whole thing? But, You don't, I get it. So that's Bill, Jan, Edie, that's kind of where my thoughts are. The safety of giving them something is pressing here.
You want to go next?
Sure. I'm where you are, Barry. The safety on the existing pool is very concerning. And I actually am where you are on the 6 foot. I understand, Jan, that people don't jump in, but I frankly like the idea of, as the applicants have said, that people will not easily be able to see it's a pool if it's a 6 foot pool. And I think if it's less than that, for a lot of people, that they'll be able to see it. So I'm not bothered by the 6 foot, and I do think you're right that whether it's 5 feet instead of 8 will alleviate what the exceptional practical difficulty is, which is the safety issue, but do it at the without cutting off as much of the setback as they're proposing.
And with that, wherever it lands, we probably have to make some exception for that tree at
Yes.
the back of the lot, angle the fence in or whatever.
Well, they said the tree will either go this
In.
side of the fence or this side.
Okay.
They
Or-
weren't gonna- The tree was, if I can speak for you, said the tree wasn't going to be cut down. The fence would either be in front of it or behind it, one place or the other.
Depending upon if the board makes
If
a
the board.
statement. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
And it should not impede on its roots,
understood,
the
yeah.
the fence. Did you have anything else, Bill?
No.
Okay, well, as usual, I do. So I looked at the quick check factors and thought about them as we've been talking and before we came. All of my factors refer to the fence, not to the interior yard walkway. I think the interior yard walkway, they'd work out with Corey. So the nature of the zone, there are no 6 foot fences in that area that I saw. I walked the whole area. I go out and see these neighborhoods and really, I walked the whole street. I walked Munson and I walked much of Scarboro. And we know that, and because all of us are residents of Rehoboth, we love the fact that it's an open, walkable neighborhood feeling in Rehoboth, that nothing is closed off. And what I did was I imagined everybody with 6 foot high fences 2 feet from the sidewalk, all the way down both places. And I thought, holy heck, and I probably said a different word, but I thought, holy heck, that's going to be like a cavern, like a canyon. It could feel like a canyon if everybody did a 59-foot, which I think I did the math to do that, and if I got it right, fence at that point. You'd feel like you were walking down a canyon. And even though people think, oh, just mine will be not a problem, all of a sudden, if just mine becomes just theirs and somebody else's, then we've changed the entire feeling of openness and walkability in the city. With the character of surrounding area, I think those are co-points because it is open and walkable and like we all like. The impact, the new fence location, if it's put where they want it, you'll probably smile at this, it'll be the endless Marco Polo as people are walking by from behind the fence. We've all heard that over and over. And so the pool noise that's not only made in the pool but reflected moves out with that fence. I'm sorry, I'm getting away from the mic. Moves out with that fence. So we have to, I think, be aware not only of what's happening outside the fence, but what's happening inside the fence. And be sure that if we're deciding to grant a variance, we're choosing a spot for the fence and that maintains both sides of the fence. And I had fence height and new location. It would create a fortress-type feeling or a canyon along more than half. I computed about 57 feet of the 100 feet along Munson. So that's more than half of their lot would be a 6 foot fence, 2 feet. I mean, 2 feet is only this much from a sidewalk.
And you're making these statements based on the request of 2 feet off
I
the
am,
sidewalk.
and I'm
Yes.
starting there because I think that's where we back off. Aaron
that's
indicated
the variance,
other
and
things,
that's
and
right.
that's, but the variance says that's what we're talking about.
Right.
So as we're talking, I'm saying maybe we look beyond. And my last, for the exceptional practical difficulty, The height of a 6-foot fence, as the gentleman said several times, that's the requirement for a public. Over and over, he said public, which I understand that he's correct, but this isn't a public pool. We can decide that it should be treated that way, or we can decide another thing, but it's not a public pool. So I don't think we would necessarily feel tied to 6 feet. If 48 inches, 4 feet is the standard for a private pool, maybe we consider that. I'm just saying. And I just think that that this could impair the intent, the variance as stated, using some of the wording in our training materials that we all had to go through. It would impair the intent and purpose of the zoning plan and the feeling of Rehoboth Beach at a 6-foot fence, 59 feet, 57, whatever I said.
2 foot off the side.
2 foot,
off the-
2
yeah.
feet. I mean, we
I
can
see
all-
where Edie's going
Yeah.
with that.
So it does, I mean, I'm agreeing that, sure, probably it doesn't impinge about traffic at certain places, but what else does it do? So I'm saying let's maybe
you
look
know,
at it a different way.
As I was thinking, someone made a mention of, you could, say if you went with a 4-foot fence.
And
let's
shrubbery on
put-
the inside.
Okay, now, as soon as you do that, you might change the sight lines to the corner.
That's right.
So and it's just so funny, the
Yep,
Cape
yep.
Gazette, they had this thing about natural buffers versus fences. Same thing here, so if you say, oh, let's make it look nice, let's make it a 4-foot fence, and then ask them to put pine trees around.
Or
Well,
inside.
Or inside or outside, where it's their land, they can plant, all of a sudden you've just blocked you got the trees, great, but you blocked the view of the corner, so it's not easy.
But you
Yeah.
know, I will point out that this year, and Corey might remember it, maybe it was in this past calendar year, it was pointed out by a resident that a building and licensing had approved it wasn't Corey that did it, 6-foot-high fences on the side street. And I can tell you, I know exactly where one of them is, and exactly what Edie is saying is exactly correct. Everybody makes fun of that house as they go down the street. This big fence all around, 6 foot high, it jumps out at you. And that's why I think 48 is enough. I don't think when you're putting it, at the edge of the property, close to the sidewalk, I think it is totally and absolutely the wrong message that we're sending in Rehoboth. I mean, this is a side pool. And there's another one farther down Scarboro from Munson, also on the left-hand side of the street, that's it has a pool in the backyard, and it has a 48 fence or a low fence. And I don't, I think it looks fine. Nobody bothers it or anything. But I know this was brought to the city's attention, 2 that were approved with 6-foot-high fences on this corner, both sides. And it's a nightmare to look at.
Other thoughts? Okay, no other thoughts? Looking for a motion from anyone, if we can. I know we have Jan's thoughts. Bill and I had thoughts on.
Well, I have a
fence
question.
height.
I think I have a question. What would be the absolute minimum that we could move the fence?
You're asking the board here, right?
Yes, I'm asking the board,
Okay,
and then I may ask Corey, but I'm
for me, it would be to give the minimum, the safety required from the water. I'm
is
from
that the 20
Philadelphia.
inches?
Well, I was thinking the 36.
36.
I was thinking the 36. I was going to apologize for how I say water, but
I understand what you're saying.
36 inches was what I was thinking, where the fence.
minimum.
Yeah, where the fence would, and then the fence would start, and we haven't discussed height yet.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
When you say 36 inches, are you measuring from, I'm going to guess this is about 11 inches?
From the edge of the pool.
Water's
The edge of the water or the
Yes.
edge of this rail?
Water's edge.
Water's
Water's edge.
Okay.
Right.
And just curious, what's the width from here, the water's edge to the house?
I don't know if we have that.
I just,
Yeah.
I don't know if Corey knows.
Just give you a
Just give
visual.
me yes, it
Yeah,
helps me
yeah.
visually figure out.
Yeah, it's
to,
not,
to the house of the pool. Corey, do you have that, or I can answer? It's approximately 3 feet.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
So that helps us visualize. So.
so we'd essentially be moving the fence about 2 feet. Is that correct?
Well, no, the question was, what is the minimum to
Yeah, but-
alleviate this?
Right, but there's a
this-
foot in there already.
Well, he said
Right,
it's
that's
less
why
than-
we said from the water's edge.
I'm thinking 36 inches.
From the water's edge is the
Right.
minimum.
Right.
But isn't there already a foot, 1 foot there?
That's beyond the water's edge, though, that 1 foot.
So you'd get 2 more feet, but I believe they
2 more
said that
feet
it's
from-
not even a foot.
Not even a
8
foot.
inches.
not-
Eight
it's 8
inches
inches.
was
What Corey
Corey's
said.
testimony. I
Correct, if you take into account. If I may, though.
Sure, of course.
Going back to this
Yeah.
depiction here.
me get
If
that
you
one.
choose to grant a variance to allow the fence to just be moved to about 2 feet to have a 3-foot clearance there, there will be no way they could differentiate the a sidewalk from the patio. So that in itself, this red part here would basically become an
That
extension
triggers
of
more
the
lot
pool
coverage.
patio.
So you'd have to
And
say,
that would
give
be a
them
structure
30.
in the
Hold on,
required
let's one at a time. So,
ahead.
could you finish?
If the fence is only granted to be pushed back to beyond this red line here, to leave about 3 feet of walk space around the pool, the water's edge, this red here, even though it's intended to be sidewalk or walkway, it would really, because the way the fence would be right there, it would just become an extension of the pool patio, of the
So
coping.
how far would it have to be moved to?
Well, there, if you granted that, we would have to grant an extension of the pool patio as well for that, if the fence were to be that close. Either that, or this would have to remain as grass.
But how far back
So
from
how-
the fence? How far back does the fence have
Well,
to
you would,
go
per
to
our
put your
code, you would need
sidewalk?
about 20 inches of clearance there. But you also don't want to create a tripping hazard. If they just have this little bit of coping shown
Right.
on here, and we move that fence back, it's just going to drop down to grass. You can try to build that up, but you're going to have a weird area that you'd have a fence, this kind of grassy area of about 2 feet, and then it would step up to the stonework right into the water. So you'd want to give them at least the ability to have a smooth walking area, so if they got up out of the pool, they wouldn't immediately have this,
Right.
Good point. Yeah, good
6-inch
point.
gap.
Okay, so the one question was, that we tried to get an answer to, was what is the minimum variance that would be required to move the fence to the 36-inch point? And you're pointing out, Corey, that to get it, you need to add some additional area. How much additional area would we need to alleviate that concern that you raised beyond the 36 inches?
It would be the length of the pool here at least, to have that area around there between the new fence line, and then this area here to have kind of like, it would look symmetrical to the other side, where it would be a smooth walking surface. But because that's a walkway around a pool, it would be an extension of the pool patio. So there's a reason why they had to put the fence and the pool patio, or the coping ending right at 10 feet, because both the fence and the coping, or the stone around the pool, couldn't project into the side yard.
But my question is a little different. If we want them to have the 3-foot walkway that they're allowed to have, right? How far away from the present fence do you have to move the new fence to be allowed to have that?
It would be probably about 2 feet and between 2 and 4 inches, a little over 2 feet.
About 2.5 feet, and that gives them a walkway that's a legal, not variance required walkway, like a sidewalk around.
Except for the fact that in the sidewalk definition, walkways around pools are
Yeah, but
counted
it's-
as structure.
But if we didn't want it to be a walkway around a pool, because that's what they don't want. They don't want a walkway around the pool, correct? Don't you want a sidewalk?
Sidewalk, I'm not sure walkway is, I don't know if it's what's defined, but the code that defines not wider than a 3-foot sidewalk or walkway.
Let me try to help. So if, from the water's edge, the stones, the coping, brick, 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 if there's no gap,
Yes.
it can't be a sidewalk. It's part of the structure of the pool.
Right.
If there was a gap, there could legally, tell me if I'm wrong, there could legally be a sidewalk. Is that correct?
we're getting into kind of
I
discretion.
know, and which we
building
shouldn't be
inspector.
solving, but I just want to know how far away do we have to?
The code only
move.
states that walkways around pools shall be considered structure. But it doesn't give a minimum, there's no quantitative.
And I can see how people play games with
And,
that.
and so I
Not you,
I
but
use my
yeah.
best judgment on certain areas. One of the things I would take in consideration to this is to make sure that we wouldn't now create a tripping hazard where people would stub their toes.
And that's critical.
Between the
Right.
coping and this
Odd.
small odd, yeah, it would be impractical.
So we need to, so what we're driving at, I think, Jan, and what I were trying to get to is how far away from the water's edge would we want to move to make no safety issues, no tripping hazards, and then they're going to have to be very cognizant of their square footage, their lot coverage to work with you, because it sounds like it would be structure, and it sounds like they had, what, 376 square feet
Well, they
to
can
deal with?
use, right, currently, based off of this survey, they can use 317 square feet for sidewalk and 9 square feet for structure. And so that portion of red here, right next to the pool coping, would be seen as structure. This all over here would be sidewalk, but once this is here, it's just an enlargement of the pool patio, as that would be seen.
Yeah, but I guess we're cross currents, aren't we?
Go ahead.
Say we don't want to, I'm making a number up. We want to move the fence 5 feet over, right? So you're 5 feet away from the water's edge. Could they put in a sidewalk by the fence that wouldn't be counted as structure?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're
Yes,
asking.
and we
How
would
far
have-
away do you have to move the fence?
What I would, if we were to do that, you'd want at least a practical, safe area where
Yeah.
you wouldn't stub your toe.
Not this far.
No, not that.
Something.
You'd have something there that would be sizable where it could be filled in with plush grass or mulch. You couldn't even do stone
Right.
because that would be considered structure here.
Right, right.
But you'd have a walkway that differentiates from the pool and the stone around the
Yeah.
pool. And you wouldn't have an odd area of natural space just to get around a zoning code. Either that, or you could grant an exception to have this here in addition to the fence.
So probably,
That would take the lot coverage over 40%.
So it's 5 or 6 feet away from the water's edge.
I would say, yeah, you'd want at least,
I'm not holding you to it.
Yeah.
Just give us a,
yeah, ballpark. I mean, they say 20 inches in the code for currently for that. I would say you'd have this coping, and then you'd have at least, about 20 inches of natural area where you could fit a good foot or so, and then you'd step up to the sidewalk. And that,
so that goes to where Jan was saying. So if you take that coping plus 20 inches, let's just call it 2 feet, and then a legal 3-foot sidewalk, you land where Jan's at 5 foot. It would be safe,
that
but
in my judgment, yes, you would be just on the interior side of that 3-inch. I've measured it myself now. It's a 4-inch tree. And that, I think, is what you said, is in between about 4 and 5 feet, give or take, from the current
then you
fence.
really need 6 feet because trees grow. I don't know what kind of tree it is, but
It's an oak.
so they grow pretty big. They grow pretty big, so, yeah, okay.
But you could, hate to be the thorn here, Jan, you could always angle the fence back near the tree.
Could cut off part of the fence as the tree grows into it.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
can do all kinds of things.
Okay, so what we were trying to get to is a motion. Anyone want to attempt to make a motion here?
Well, I think we have a difference, in that where Edie and I both think that 48 inches is high enough, and you two think that 6 feet is the way to go. So we have a 2-foot difference. And we have a tie because we have 4 of us. And a tie means you don't get it. So,
Well, in theory, we have a tie. We don't know what we've got.
right, well,
So we're
but just
So we
from,
hear the
just from
motion.
hearing the
right.
discussion, if Fred doesn't get to vote, so.
Well, I'll make a motion, we can vote on it at least. I move that we grant a variance to erect a new fence approximately 5 feet from the current location,
No, on the water's edge.
from the water's edge. Okay, excuse me, thank you, please correct. Of 48 inches. And I'm going to stop talking, because I think that's all we need, because the applicants will resolve, the applicants will resolve any other dimensions with Corey, correct, for, like, if there's enough square footage to do all the walkway that they wanted. Because this drawing shows a lot of walkway, and there may not be enough square feet for all of that. And my motion just now did not deal with that. It just said move it. And then if they have extra square feet, as we know, they could use it any way they wanted. But I'm not suggesting that we're approving all of this square footage. That was my motion, so.
I'll second it.
And if we vote on this and it
Correct.
passes, then the homeowners don't have to abide by it. They can just replace the 6-foot fence where it sits.
Where it is.
Or even seek a administrative variance to move it 1 foot.
Okay, understood.
Corey had something.
I was just quickly doing the math. If they have an existing coping that's 12 inches, and you leave a 20-inch space of natural area, and then 36 inches or 3 feet of the sidewalk, that would give you 68 inches.
Okay,
So that about
that's-
5 feet 8 inches.
Okay.
yeah.
5 what?
5 feet.
5 feet 8 inches, or you could just go with 68 inches.
Yeah, we could just,
So is that like a friendly amendment then?
yeah, I should rephrase, right? Okay, cancel that last transmission. All right. I move that we allow a new fence to be built along the Munson side, as shown here, at approximately 5 feet 8 inches from the water's edge, of 48 inches high.
Can I just make a friendly, can we just make it 6 feet from the water's edge? Give a little,
Well, we're worried about the tree too, but,
okay.
No, it's up to.
They don't
six-
have to use, you don't have to utilize
Yeah,
the
it's up
entire.
to 6 feet.
okay, well,
Up to
okay.
6 feet.
Okay,
Up to
start
6
again, okay.
Up to 6 feet. Can
I move that we allow the erection of a new up to 6 foot, a new fence up to 6 feet from the water line of 48-inch height.
And I second that.
Okay. Let's vote on that. So Edie?
So hold on.
Hang on.
Is anything you wanted to add?
No, I was looking at the survey. It shows currently 11.2 feet from the property line to the water's edge. So a 6-foot fence would now have a 5.2 feet of clearance between the fence and the property line.
And the property line.
Okay.
Much better for the canyon effect,
So,
lack of thereof.
you can deliberate on this, and you can, in the course of deliberating, you can talk about an alternative motion that might be made in the event that this one were to fail.
I was very concerned about the safety of the height of the fence, but code says it's got to be 4 foot minimum.
And so does the American Association
right.
of Pediatrics.
And I think with some creative landscaping, inside and outside the fence, well, no, there's going to be a sidewalk, but on the outside of the fence with some bushes, you're going to see the pool. I don't think there's a way around that. And we had another case over on Schoolview Extended where it came up, I don't know if you recall that, Jan, where we had to approve a front yard on the corner at 4
I
foot.
voted against that one.
Yeah. So I could probably go along with this, but I'm really concerned about the safety.
Yeah, I'm too, but there are plenty of pools, a lot of pools, that have almost nothing, you know, in town. So I'm prepared to go along with it. I understand the issue on the canyon effect in terms of high fences.
Okay, so we have to do a formal vote on this, so I'm going to start with the author.
I vote yes on this variance because of the quick check factors. The nature of the zone would allow such a fence now that the canyon effect is going to be minimized, and keeping the great tree, because I'm a tree person as well. It meets the character of the surroundings. It will mitigate what I mentioned before, that there wouldn't be endless Marco Polo noises at almost the sidewalk for people walking along. I think the exceptional practical difficulty is, I'm still torn about whether it exists, but I'm willing to go with you guys and say that there is a safety issue with this very, very, very narrow strip on the inside of the current fence. And so I will vote yes on the variance,
Okay, thank you, Edie.
the motion, I should say.
Jan, I'll go to you.
I vote yes on the variance. I do think, looking at, I think there is an exceptional practical difficulty. I can't believe the city required this, in 2018.
Proved it.
Approved it.
yeah.
And there is definitely, and you've managed all these years with no major injuries or anything. So I do think there's a practical difficulty here, and I think, but I like the idea of moving the fence and 48, and I think that keeps us in touch with the neighborhood and with the ambiance of Rehoboth Beach.
Thank you, Jan.
And just to be clear, that was a vote in favor of the motion.
Did I not say that?
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
said in favor of the variance, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, in
but
favor
the
of the
motion
motion.
is different from the
Right,
application.
exactly.
Yep.
It's in favor of the motion.
I'll support the motion as well. I think they've met the exceptional practical difficulty, and I think a balance that Edie has put forward in the motion for all four factors meets the quick check factors.
Thank you. And I'm going to vote in favor of this, meeting the quick check factors. I think the overriding thing for me was safety. Not moving it all the way to the 2 foot from the sidewalk was important to me, keeping it back so we get that medium. We've met the minimum height that's required for a fence. I think with some creative landscaping, you can help hide it without impeding the Scarboro and Munson Street view. So I think you can be creative there and correct the safety issue. So with that, you're approved 4-0. Thank you. Okay. As stated in the motion.
Great.
Thank you for coming to us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And the reason there's so much traffic on Munson now? It's because Waze and Google is sending people who are coming from the south headed up. They're sending them through Rehoboth, down Munson, down Rehoboth Avenue, around the circle and out, because Munson was not always a very heavily trafficked street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rewrite the software.
Yeah. I don't believe we have any other business to attend to.
And thank you, Corey, again, for
Yeah.
these excellent
Hey,
reports.
may I get a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn. Second.
Okay. And we'll call it 4:45 adjournment. Thank you, everyone.